2, check. It's so great that you cut in during the spooky part, our month of October. If you were a wrestler, that's absolutely when the pyro shoots off. I do know how to make an entrance, Marty. I do know how to make an entrance, don't I? And that stare, I think that was the first time I actively dissociated when I was opening the show. I think I actually got lost somewhere there for a moment. I stared into myself, and I don't know if I liked what I saw, frankly. I don't know if I liked what I saw one bit. I really almost kind of lost it there. G. Cleffy says, well, if it isn't my old nemesis, Chat and Rob. And then no thanks to old Rob. And then to new Rob. I see. G. Cleffy, who pretends to not like Chat, who pretends to not like your own host of this very program, or at the very least wants to replace him with someone else, some long prophesied new Rob, who again will never be here. There's never going to be a new Rob. That's not true. But G. Cleppy, prior to the stream even starting, I don't know if she tried to sneak this one under the radar. You'll notice the subs today. You'll notice that number. There's a little number 1. There's a little number 1. And G. Cleppy, prior to the stream starting, thought she could sneak one in there, didn't she? Thought she could sneak in there with a 23-month resub at tier 1. Thank you, G. Cleffy. I know you thought you could just sneak that in there without me acknowledging it, but thank you. Thank you for all the loyal support for those 23 long months. I don't know if this community would be where it is without the long-standing, strong support of valued community member G. Cleppy, who apparently just hates this community so much that she attended an in-person TRRS meetup with other community members a few weeks ago. Must have just been just as her finger must have slipped on the subscribe button, must have just accidentally showed up for that as well. Just got lost and just accidentally, whoa, hey, who's this? Just bumps into everybody, totally by accident. I thought you meant they did a 2-year sub. No, Oops, I'm in a national forest with a bunch of other TRRSers. How did this happen? And no, Sinchal, I will do the by Monday, okay? This is my pledge to you, the viewer. By Monday, I will have the 2-year TRRS sub badge. Okay, this is my promise to you. How's everyone doing? How's it going? Talk to me. What is up? As I mentioned earlier, I'm actually going to a concert tonight. Tonight I'm seeing the Loop Daddy, Mark Rabier, who I've talked about on this stream before. I am seeing Mark Rabier live in concert tonight with my stepson. As I mentioned, it was his birthday earlier this month, and I'm bringing him to see Mark Rabier. And like I mentioned before, didn't seem super enthusiastic. Okay, he wasn't that over the moon about this idea, but I do think that he will, once there, be like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm hoping, anyways. I'm going to try to break through his teenage cynicism. I'm going to try. I'm going to see what I can do. I'm going to try to break through his teenage cynicism for that. But he really likes music. You know, he has this really strong music program in his school. I think he'll appreciate Mark. Mark's a super talented guy. He's unbelievably talented to watch him kind of improvise all this music. And I think it's just going to be, I hope it'll be fun. I hope it'll be cool. Live music in this economy. Well, I know. I'm kind of nervous about it. I haven't been to see a live show. I did go to a basketball game over the summer, but I have not been to a live show in like 2.5 years. So, you're saying Mark Rabier? Rabier, yeah, that's right. Hopefully gets a hunger for it, then you can introduce him to FL Studio. Yeah. For sure. That should be fun. I'm looking forward to that. I pronounce it rebelette. No, it's not rebelette. It's French. You uncultured swine, Johnny. It's French. C'est Rébier. Marc Rébier. You have to do it with the R sounds as well, like that. Let it be known that after my surgery yesterday, I forced myself to watch a stream consisting of information about Truss's necklace, which has implications I will not speak of, and wrestling. This is how you treat a wounded member. I'm so sorry, Dimitri. What did you have surgery for? What was your surgery? I must have missed that. Anti-Francophone action. Well, I actually support that, regardless of any statements that I just made. Yeah, did you also get snipped? I'm still working that out. I'm still working out the details on my vasectomy. The community vasectomy event that everyone's talking about. The community vasectomy event of the year is happening on this very community. And that's obviously what Dimitri's up to as well. Outrun, how are you recovering, Outrun? Me and the boys after getting snipped. Prefer the term snippage? Okay, well, we can workshop. We can workshop that. That's no problem. The community vasectomy event of the year. You don't want to miss this, folks. You don't want to miss this. I have nothing. I would have nothing against. I recommend having kids if you want to have kids. I encourage you to do so. Having a kid is wonderful. Having kids is tremendous. I love being a dad. I love having kids. I just don't want any more kids. Okay, I'm not one of these like weird like anti-child people. There's this kind of new contingent that we see now that are like super. It's weirdly like anti-child, and they fucking lose their minds every time a child does anything. It's just like, will you fucking calm down? That's how we like perpetuate the species. Like we do have to do that, but no more kids for me though. I think I'm good. I think I'm good to go. Right? I think I'm all right. The idea, and I do. Those people are peak brainworms. Totally. I do think sometimes, I loved having a little baby, and like sometimes I do this. There's this thought that sneaks into my mind. It's like, wouldn't it be kind of nice again to have a little baby that you're carrying around and having them crawling around and babbling, and it's fun. It's really fun and incredible to see someone transform from a tiny little baby into like a person in this like 5, 6, 7 year process, or longer, obviously, but from a baby to someone that can walk around and talk to you and has thoughts and interests and like, it's incredible. It's incredible. But I also think at the same time, like, wow, going back to square one, after I've not slept properly in probably in 7 years coming up on, going back to absolutely square one. Wow, that's really kind of terrifying as well at the same time, isn't it? Not that it's that horrible of a thing, but it's just like, I think I already did it once and I think I'm good now. I don't think I need to know I don't think I need to go through that again. Seeing her learn how to read and learning about the world through her eyes all over again is so fulfilling, but no thank you, rather not. And that's fair, right? That's totally fair. So no more for me. Would you recommend having a vasectomy for a laugh? I mean, not if you want to eventually have children, then no, because then you would cry. So, I don't know. If you just want to do it for a bit, I don't know if I would recommend that. Just as like a joke, just for content, just as a joke. I don't know about that. I don't know if I can recommend that. You can see the YouTube thumbnail now, like, Like a doctor, like with a mean face. Maybe like, remember Dr. Giggles? It's horror movie month. Remember that one? Kind of an unheralded slasher, that one, isn't it? Dr. Giggles. Throw him on there as well. Creepy guy. I got snipped and never expected this. Uber driver snipped my balls? Dr. Giggles, very creepy. Very creepy horror character. Doctor with a determined face with a comically large pair of scissors, and Rob is doing pog face. Yeah, for sure. This is what I mean. Paying someone $100 in an alley to give me a vasectomy. Sponsored. Yeah. Gig economy app for doing vasectomies. I'm just trying to like figure, because it's like it's somewhat cost prohibitive. I'm trying to see if it's covered by insurance right now. And it's silly because how that should be free. You know, it should be free to get a vasectomy. I got snipped in Biden's America. You know, it should be free, just as like all healthcare and all contraceptives should be free. So should getting a vasectomy. You should just be able to sign up you should be able to go to like a government vasectomy clinic at any time. Walk-in appointment. You know? We should have that. It should be free. It cost $1,004 for me, but I avoided $200 in anesthesia. But you seem like you kind of regretted that a little bit, Outrun. Oh, Jesus, Starlight. Government vasectomy clinic? Do you mean the IRS? Oh, my gosh. Oh, my goodness. How do you even respond to that? I don't know. They won't provide a living wage, but they'll snip your junk in Brandon's America. We do want the government to perform those services, but last time that happened here, they were doing it Native Americans only, so not great. Ideally, you want some choice in there. That's the thing. I'm not saying mandatory, right? We don't want that. We don't want mandatory vasectomies or abortions or any of that kind of contraceptives. But the idea that it would be there when someone wants to, that's, I think, the ideal. You don't want mandatory for any of this stuff. I regret that, and also having, per the doctor, difficult balls. Well, if there's one thing I know about you, Marty, and I often say this to you, right, in our many offline conversations, that your balls are just very difficult. We're often talking about this, and I think that's something that you need to work on, frankly. This often comes up in our long late night chats. I chat with Marty, aka Outrun, like on one of those phones that's clear. You can see all the like the inside parts to it, and I'm like on the bed, like on the tummy, rolling the cord around. Hours and hours and hours like that. Sometimes not even talking. It's like sometimes we're doing other things, you know? But just I need him there. The connection needs to be there. Okay, so 10,000 sandwiches. I don't know if what you just wrote is meant to be in the tune of the Bee Gees' Staying Alive, but I read it like that. Well, you can tell by how he mauls that he has difficult balls. Was that intentional on your part, or do you think that was more of a subliminal thing? Did you mean for me to read that in the tune of the Bee Gees' Staying Alive? wish I could take credit for that. It worked perfectly. Sort of like tripping into the TMNT theme song bit. Yeah. I appreciate the concern about my surgery. Was nothing like vasectomy major, just a complete oral reconstruction of my gums and bones. Laughing internally because I'll faint if I do it out loud. I'm nervous for the stream. Dimitri, oh my goodness. That sounds serious. We wish you a very speedy recovery. No one be funny. No one say anything funny. Okay? Hello, Husker. What's up? No one say anything funny. Or this is your last chance. If I see anyone being funny in chat, you're out of here. Yes, Starlight, that's on you, okay? That's going out to you especially. No one is allowed to laugh for a week in solidarity. It's just like the DPRK. On the anniversary of Kim Il-sung's death, no one's allowed to laugh, all right? We had the stream on this show when that happened, and no one laughed. Not me or not anyone else. No one laughed. And we'll be doing it again now in solidarity with our friend Dimitri. We should do a Chad versus Rob staring contest again. Just do that for the whole day just to be safe. I almost tear up laughing every time I see stare. I don't know what it is. The one today was a good one. I got to admit, that was a good one. We got lots of serious stuff to talk about as well today, folks. Hopefully, by the way, this is... I don't know if you can... I know you can... Like, I listen to the stream back sometimes, and I know you can still hear a little bit of an echo. It's not as bad as when I started... when I came back a couple weeks ago. But I am putting up some curtains in this room... over the weekend, which should improve that. I also got a rug. I bought a rug last night that I'm kind of excited about. It seems like a too good to be true thing. It's like a Persian knockoff rug for very little money that I got. I'm not expecting much because it was like 50% off and it's really not very much money. It's going to tie the room together, yes, and it's going to increase it's going to decrease the ability of the sound waves coming out of my mouth to like bounce around on the walls and stuff. YouTube idea. We splice two videos together. One has chat across a 3-hour stream. The one is just literally staring and not moving for 3 hours. That would be funny. A good rug can really tie the room together. That's right. And this man peed on it. His wife goes out and owes money all over town and they pee on your rug? They peed on my fucking rug. That's right, dude. They peed on your fucking rug. The amazing thing about that script, for like that scene, including to known pornographers. Oh my. You read that script and it's all word for word like that on the script. All the stuff where they're like interrupting each other and it sounds so improv, and like every single interruption and they're reading the script exactly word for word. Every single word. It's really amazing. Jackie Treehorn treats objects like women, man. Carpets are the smaller ones, and rug is wall to wall. No, I think it's the opposite. I think it's a carpet is like your whole floor, whereas a rug is just like a limited part of the floor. Do you want to see, Chad? Do you want to see the rug that I purchased? Would you like to see the rug that I purchased? What do you think? Rug reveal. I'm going to show you the rug. Here's my window capture. Here we are. It's kind of big, isn't it? It's that. That's the rug. For $169, it's 50% off. 5x8. 5x8 for $169. Like, that just seems so low. And that seems so low. Like, I'm sure there's some catch here. Like the small Lenin bust that I got. I'm sure there's some, like it says 5x8 feet, but it's like, they're like, oh no, that's where we mark inches. Something like that. I don't know. For $169, obviously it's not authentic. Like, obviously, if it wouldn't, it would be like $1,000 if it was actually authentic. Obviously it's not, but 169 seems that seems low. I guess it's regularly $338. It's regularly $338. 50% off. Rugs.ca, where I got that. Rugs.ca, where I ordered that. So that's it. That's the rug. Thank you to new sponsor. New sponsor, rugs.ca. Enter the special promo code TRRS to get a little discount on a rug. And if they don't give you the discount, you're legally allowed to write them an email and threaten to stab them. Legally. I made sure that was in my contract that I signed with rugs.ca. If you try to cash in on that, and they don't, and they say no, they say, what is that code? That's not a real code. You can threaten to stab them. Okay, give me 20% off with code triangle20. That's it. There's no place to like put that in the order form, but if you just send a separate email with that, what G Cluppy wrote exactly, with the knife rob emote. They legally have to honor that. Price is so low, we think you got robbed. There we go. Anyway, that's the rug that I purchased. I'm also looking at buying a chair. Looking at a couple chairs. You have to send a letter and get a voucher. That's correct. Yeah. That's exactly right. I'm getting a chair as well. Oh, I got a bunch of like old Soviet and Cuban propaganda posters as well. Dimitri actually recommended this to me, that website Propagandopolis. I got like 5 really high quality, cool old Soviet and Cuban propaganda posters to put up, which should be cool. I guess like I like having this blank wall here. I could put like something there. We'll see. We'll see how she goes. Yeah, I think I agree with that, Marty. I think the wall should stay blank. Not sure anything you put there would be anything other than distracting or so skewed it'd be hard to make out. Yeah, I think you're probably right. It was a crazy idea already. I literally thought that was the wall behind you, and I just realized that the wall was that close to you. Oh shit, I guess it does kind of look like that a little bit. You can see from the light bouncing off it here, though. See? But I see how you would think that. But no. That is not what it looks like. This whole thing is like kind of an MC Escher kind of thing. It's designed to like disorient you. It's designed to disorient you and make you feel uncomfortable. It's like a Kubrick film. And it's like when I start asking about subs and triangles and this kind of stuff, you go, "What? I'm confused. I'm confused. Where's my credit card? Where is it? Oh, I mean, I'm disoriented." This is not at all how I thought this room's geography worked. Damn, I'm blowing. I thought it was obvious because of the light. I know sometimes I get up and you can see that there. Rob's living in a den of lies. Never leave stage left. I can't. I physically can't. I physically cannot. Do you want to see? Do you want to see what things look like from my perspective? Could that be kind of interesting? Do you want to see what things look like from where I'm sitting? My mind is fucking blown that I've never noticed you not get up to the left. Okay, 1 second. I gotta get my phone. It's just it's charging over here. Okay. Is my... Okay. I'm gonna check something. All right, here we go. Yeah. Smile chat. I'm going to post it in the Discord and then I'm going to bring it up on my browser here. Okay, let's see. I just posted it in the Discord server. Here we go. In case you're not looking at that. Here we go. That's what I see. Slightly uncomfortable with the size of the VLC. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Two screens. That's right. Thanks to the wonderful members of this very community. What do you think? That's kind of cool, right? The trees outside are turning a really lovely color. It's nice. The fall, I really enjoy looking at the fall colors outside. Anyway, that's it. Little inside perspective. If I was being really clever, I would put a tab. This is what I should, if I had thought about this ahead of time, I would have put like a tab, like a CIA.gov tab in the browser, just for the really obsessive, if people wanted to zoom in there. And if there was just one little tiny thing, that would have been a good bit. That would have been a good bit. That would have been pretty good. I didn't think of that ahead of time, though. Have you fixed your internet speed on your computer? Well, I didn't really. I put a Zoom call with John Cipher on the left. Yeah, a tab where you get Putin's orders. VPN server named CIA work. That's right. I didn't really fix the internet on my computer. All I fixed was like that my computer just doesn't ever go to sleep now. I just put it so it doesn't go to sleep, because as soon as that happens, the internet shuts off until I like unplug the cord and go through all these hoops to get it to come back on. So I just did that. So now it just never turns off. NAFO memes folder. That would have been good. That would have been good. Does that happen when you restart your computer too? Yes, it does. When I turn the computer off, when it goes to sleep, and I restart it, it doesn't work. It was probably your Ethernet cable that you need to check. But if it was, I feel like it wouldn't be. It's worked perfectly for the last like several days. So I don't think it's physically the cable. It's only when the computer goes to sleep or turns off and turns back on. So if it was the cable, it wouldn't just continue to work without turning it on and off, right? It's like Nightmare on Elm Street. That's right. We are talking about Cold War 2.0. That's right, Dimitri. I just wanted to do a little bit of a chit chat ahead of time. Yesterday, we kind of really rushed into things with our main interview with Kai Nagata, which was great, by the way. Which was great. But I kind of jumped right into it. I think the driver isn't turning back on, or it's stuck in sleep mode or something. But it wasn't doing that before. That's the thing. I think it was like a Windows update thing that changed it. Because it wasn't doing that before. If you're just leaving your computer on, you'd better be seeding your torrents. John, I don't want to comment on my seeding etiquette. Let's not go there. Let's not go there, okay? We don't need to talk about that. We don't need to discuss that. Two convos about seeding, but in a different context. And everyone says, I wish I could come fix it for you. Well, I guess you'll just have to come hang out in Montreal, huh? I guess you'll just have to. Oh, shucks. Oh, darn. I hate that. Seed your torrents. Obviously, I seed my torrents, folks. Obviously. You think I just download a torrent, and then literally the very moment that it downloads, I hit pause on uploading and delete? You think I do that? Really? You think I'm that much of a monster? You think the moment that the torrent downloads and I get the little notification that it downloads, I go in and immediately delete it? Wow. That's what you think of me. That's what you think of me. That's very disappointing. It's very disappointing that you think that I would do something like that, chat. I would never dream of acting like that. I would never dream of immediately deleting the torrents the moment that my file has been downloaded. How dare you? How dare you, chat? It's actually what the VJ Wow Rock clip is about. Oh boy. All right, what else do we got? What time is it? 1:30? Okay. I guess I gotta get started on talking about the subject at hand pretty soon. I'm feeling very chill. I know I do have serious stuff to talk about, and we're going to. I think you can tell what days I hit my vape prior to the stream and which days that I don't. I think today's I could literally just sit here for the next 3-4 hours and just do what we've been doing. Like, I would be fine with just doing that today. I would be fine with just, I don't even know what we've been doing this whole time. Just kicking it. We can do that sometimes as well. Low-key Friday. But I live in that vape life. I did promise some serious Cold War discussion. It's right there in the title. I did promise some serious discussion, so I'm going to deliver that for you. Okay, I'm not going to back down on my promise. Been tripping on walls, that's right. Thank you for reminding me to take my nice little 3 milligram edible, Rob. No problem. No problem, 10,000 sandwiches. It's my pleasure. People are clowning our boy Jeff Sachs. What did Jeff do now? What did Jeff do now? I know I've seen him taking some criticism for the fact that he calls COVID like he literally came out and said COVID was like a U.S. bioweapon. Which I don't know if that's true. I've seen a lot of people, even like kind of like socialists and people that are not, that are major critics of U.S. and U.S. foreign policy come out like and say that's nonsense. But I appreciate him for taking this forceful stance, though. Let's see where he's going with this. Let's hear him out. Let's hear him out. He is one of the few mainstream Americans who has come out against the whole China genocide narrative, though. And I think he wrote a pretty convincing piece about exactly his reasoning on that, which of course he was attacked nonstop for, despite it being very reasonable and not super radical or crazy. I do want to know about these biolabs. I do just want to know. I'm not saying anything was going on there. I mean, I'm sure something was. Right? Obviously something was. I'm not saying what that is. I would like to know what it was. I'm sure we would all be interested to find out what was going on there. I'm prepared to support it regardless. We can investigate what was going on in those biolabs. Something was going on there. They're not. What are they doing? Just making detergent or something? What are they doing? Oh yeah, we're just making new kinds of medicine over there. Are you? Is that what you're doing? I wouldn't write anything off when it comes to the U.S. dastardly deeds. I mean, even Stephen King called this back in The Stand. That's the amazing thing about The Stand, is that Stephen King literally he openly says the United States government created a bioweapon that destroyed all life on Earth. And also, even after all life on Earth has been destroyed, we need to reconstitute the United States of America. That's the ultimate Stephen King liberal. That's the liberal brain, like we were talking about the other day. America literally just is so evil that it destroyed the whole world, and also we must rebuild America from the ground up and read the fucking Constitution again to each other in the ashes of the country. That's peak liberal mindset. I love Stephen King, but you gotta... It really says something. The problem and the solution to all life's problems. That's right. Stephen King and Mark Hamill are the same person. Yeah. Hamill's a great case, too, just because he literally starred in a movie explicitly about the United States Empire and how evil it is, and seems to have misunderstood just the basic premise of his own franchise. Hey, Squatch, how's it going? Why the fuck would they need 336 labs in Eurasia? It is a good question, Matt. It is a good question. Maybe that is something we should take a look at. Hamill raising money for drones. Thanks, Luke. Yeah, because of the evil empire of Russia. So Hamill calls Russia now they're being like the empire. That's why I'm raising money to buy drones for Ukraine. When literally we saw that picture of Zelensky the other day wearing a shirt that said "Join the dark side," that had a stormtrooper with a Ukrainian flag stomping on the head of a Soviet cosmonaut. Like he's literally explaining to you here. He's literally explaining to you exactly what's going on, exactly what this analogy is, and you're still missing it, sir. You still don't quite get it, sir. Man. Hollywood is really not sending our best. Are we the baddies? Mark still is not able to answer this question, despite all the evidence, the decades of evidence. The decades of evidence at hand. Mark Hamill still doesn't get this, nor does Stephen King. Even when Stephen King admits that they are the baddies, he's like, but still we're not the baddies, though. We're the baddies, but not the really bad baddies like those other guys, those devious Russians. The devious Russians. These guys have just had their brains melted with Cold War propaganda, haven't they? They have just had their brains completely melted from a lifetime of Cold War propaganda, just that they're constantly inundated with. But both of them are right in that age, right? Right in that age where they really got it in those formative years, the nonstop Red Scare propaganda. It just totally destroyed them. Even people that are intelligent, ostensibly they've got some ability to think critically, but that Red Scare propaganda really just fucking got them. Everyone 50 to 80 is like they're pure evil incarnate. Yeah, exactly. It's just built into them. I mean, that's exactly why, folks, and this is kind of a transition, right? This is kind of a transition. That's exactly why I have, I've made it whatever role that I can play with the platform that I have online or on Twitch or whatever is to try to counteract, because this new wave of Red Scare propaganda, like this is one of the main things we have talked about on this show now for 3 years almost, or 2 full years. We're going into year 3. The new Cold War. It's one of the main things that we've talked about now since 2020. And we're seeing, while we're talking about people like Mark Hamill and Stephen King and these boomer liberals and the ways that their minds have been melted with Red Scare propaganda. They took the rulers of our society, the elites, or whoever we want to call them, the imperialists, they kind of took their finger off the Red Scare propaganda button a little bit. In the 90s, when they thought they had defeated socialism forever, the Soviet Union was gone. China was on their side, right? China was just another pliant colony, basically a capitalist colony that they were doing their work for them. They had everything well in hand. We don't need to press the Red Scare propaganda button anymore. Then you had the sort of end of history period, and then 9/11 happens. What a coincidence. Then 9/11 happens. And then they just mashed the Islamophobic jihad propaganda button for 20 straight years. They forgot. They fell asleep at the wheel. They took their finger off the Red Scare propaganda button. They went down the path of like Islamic extremism, Islamophobia. They mashed that propaganda button. And then what had happened is they noticed what was going on with China. And they said, wait a minute. I thought these guys, they were supposed to be on our side. I thought during the whole Deng Xiaoping era, we had an understanding here. They were going to do all the work for us. They were going to make all our stuff. They were going to make too much Gladio B, not just Gladio, not enough Gladio A. I thought they were just going to make all our stuff. Make all our cheap stuff. We're going to make the Walton they made the Walton family and others extremely wealthy. They were central cogs in the whole neoliberal era. They made all kinds of powerful people in America very wealthy and powerful, making stuff for us. And then sometime around 2011, between 2011 and 2014, elites in the United States started to say, like, whoa, wait a moment, what's going on here? What's going on here? It kind of seems like this isn't like a pliant comprador nation of capitalists, but it kind of seems like they're in the process of building socialism here. I know they always said that they were doing that, but we thought it was a lie. But it kind of seems like they're now in this process of building socialism. And it kind of seems like they're in the process of surpassing us as the top global economy. Oh, fuck. And it kind of seems like now they're becoming this economic superpower that is now taking over our position in the global south as the main country that is like helping all these global south countries develop. And they're not doing it with like the bullshit horrible deals that we've been making. We've been forcing them at gunpoint to accept this kind of like extreme neoliberal capitalism. They're doing it in this totally different way. They're building infrastructure. They're building roads and bridges and ports and schools and hospitals and rail. Oh, fuck. And then it's like now they're overcompensating again. Now that we got to get right back on that Red Scare propaganda button. We got to get right. We fell asleep at the wheel here. We kind of got caught unawares during this whole global war on terror. We forgot doing our Red Scare propaganda. And now that we're starting to realize that we're about to get our asses kicked. And in fact, the chess move has already been, like the chess game has already been finalized. We can just see it down the road. We can see it, 8 to 12 moves down the road. So now we got to overcompensate. We got to smash that Red Scare propaganda button again. And that's when we started doing this show. That's when TRRS started to broadcast. So it's really one of the main things that we've covered. The new Cold War. The new Red Scare propaganda. Russiagate was the opening, like the beginning of it, really. Right? The pivot to China happened under Obama around 2014. And I always get so fascinated with those opinion polls. Those opinion polls about China, and you just see all throughout the Western world, you see around 2014 as it starts to dip. That's when the pivot to Asia happened. Then there's Russiagate. And now we're in this once again, this nonstop inundation of Red Scare propaganda. And just like it affected our parents' generation and affected people like Mark Hamill and Stephen King, there's going to be lots of people in our generation that are going to have their brains melted by it as well. Yeah, probably woke up a bit when China executed all those CIA agents in 2011 and when she started ramping up the anti-corruption. Well, that's it. They realized, oh fuck, we weren't paying attention to what was going on here. Or we thought we understood what was going on, but really we've been maybe misled a little bit. So right now we're right back in square one, and this new Cold War. I mean, Russia's been the main focus because of their attack on Ukraine and because of the invasion of Ukraine, but the pivot is coming to China. They're the big bad in geopolitical official enemy states. Yeah, I remember Obama laughing at Romney saying that considering Russia a threat was showing his age because the Cold War is over. Yeah, I do remember. And all the liberal journalists as well. Can you believe how out of touch this guy is? All the same people that talk about Russia nonstop each and every day of their lives now. The critical thinkers in the so-called free media in the United States. They need control of Russia's fuel before they can reliably wage war on China. And that was another big domino to fall, right, for these elites, these imperialists. When Russia and China, despite decades of being like enemies, since the Sino-Soviet split, which was a huge victory for Western imperialism, the Sino-Soviet split, And that's been a big factor in accelerating this as well. The fact that these countries are coming back together and forming this really strong diplomatic partnership, which is an ideological foes. It's true. And it's amazing as well. It just speaks to how ignorant the people running America and running the Western, these Western geopolitical strategies are, is that their own belligerent, it didn't have to be this way. They had basically won. All they had to do was keep Russia and China apart, but they're just so fucking belligerent, and they couldn't stop. Even when Russia wanted to be in, there was literally asking NATO, asking the United States, we want to be an ally with you now. And they're just so fucking belligerent that they just couldn't take yes for an answer. It's one of the kind of satisfying things about this moment, isn't it? They just couldn't take yes for an answer. They had Russia right where they wanted them, and they had to keep punishing them, didn't they? They have to keep punishing and humiliating them. They just had to. And they continued doing that until all of a sudden these two states, which were ideologically opposed, which are enemies again, and to the great benefit of the West, and they pushed them right back together out of necessity, along with other countries that don't necessarily belong in that kind of coalition, like Iran. Right? It was their own belligerence, their own inability to take yes for an answer that allowed these countries to start coming together. Hey, really chill guy, what's up? By the way, I meant to DM you about this, Jordan, but the new episode is in the Dropbox, the new episode of the podcast. Jordan and I, it's already live. There we go. Really chill guy and I yesterday spoke with Twitch streamer Frogan. We talked with Frogan yesterday. Which I will link in the chat right now. This is the preview. Is Saudi Arabia joining BRICS? Well, that's one of the things we talked about, Dorian, which is that this is the one amazing thing that is going on that's really unique in our lifetimes, where even these fascist governments, even these horrible governments that we don't really like or support, like Saudi Arabia, like India, right? These are brutal governments that they're not in any way governments that we should be promoting or advocating for. But even these governments, which were staunch Western allies, even they are starting to say no thanks when the US comes knocking at their door and starts to order them around. You know? That's a really interesting development. And we don't have to, I see people the weird MAGA communists now saying talking about based Saudi Arabia and stuff for rebuking America. And obviously we don't need to do that. It's a fucking brutal regime, which we should not be trying to suggest is some kind of anti-imperialist, obstacle to the West. But it is a really interesting, I think, example that's really, really unique in our lifetimes of how the United States is kind of on the verge of losing its grip as being the global hegemon, right? And a lot of these countries, even places like Saudi Arabia or India, they recognize which way the wind is blowing, and they're brutal regimes in their own right. They've been put in place in many ways and held in place by U.S. power. And even these countries are starting to recognize how the tides are turning, and they're jumping off the train. It's the shift from pro-West. That's the shocker. Yeah, and it's just like I said, we don't have to praise these regimes, and we shouldn't, but it is a really interesting and very, very new development that these countries are starting to just, when the U.S. says, we need your support, they go to India and say, we need your support and backing us on Russia, Ukraine. And India is just no, we don't think so. Sorry. Unlike India is saying unlike Britain or France or Germany, we're not just going to willingly destroy our own economy and destroy our own access to cheap fuel because you told us to. No, thank you, America. And even it is a brutal regime, but the Indian people, regardless of their political leanings, also do understand the role that the Britain, obviously, and the West has played in the development of their country, and what has meant for millions of people in their own country. Yeah, when you see what we do to our pals in Europe, can you blame them? That's kind of what I mean. It's like you see these kinds. It's like it's not surprising that they're making this decision. Like we always go back to that Henry Kissinger quote, right? To be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend can be deadly, or whatever. It's something along those lines. These countries understand that, and like I said, they're not run by stupid people. They're run by very cruel and horrible people in some cases, but they're not stupid. They're able to understand where these geopolitical trends are leading. It's also the potential loss as the U.S.'s right hand in a particular region, which is massive. Yeah. And that's what I mean. We shouldn't support any of these regimes, but I think we can still, if you are anti-imperialist and you are interested in the decline of Western hegemony or the decline of U.S. hegemony, it's still an interesting development to pay attention to. Two-thirds of the world population doesn't give a shit about the war. Why would they? Wars imposed by the West has been the norm for the past 70 years. Yeah. For sure. It's a really interesting development. It really is. Not stupid, just mediocre at best. Mediocre. It's a really interesting development. But what we're talking about is this pivot, to Western elites, Western imperialists going back to smashing that Red Scare propaganda button, and this pivot to China that is happening, which is only going to intensify. Before I move on, I'm just going to get this pivot to Flavor Town.
Russo, some
That's
leftist
right.
Based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Lucid, thank you very much for the raid. Lucid Fox, get in here, Raiders. Get in here. I'm here for the friendship triangle. That's right, Lucid. Lucid Fox, more than anyone else, understands that the friendship triangle community is not a cult or a pyramid scheme. Lucid knows this. We've been over this many times. If there's one thing, if there's two things, it isn't.
Have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
This is my favorite generic brand alternative to American Jameson.
If there's two things, it is not. The friendship triangle.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Orb Lady, thank you for the 13 months of Tier 1. And thank you, Nora, as well, for the 3 months of Tier 1. I am Rob, folks. If you want to chat, smash that follow button. Listen, smashing the follow button costs nothing. It costs nothing to smash the follow button. And I'm getting up there. I'm approaching 8,000 followers here on Twitch. You can contribute to that by just clicking that follow button.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Comrade Social Distancing, for the gifted sub as well. Must we explain again? It's not a cult. Thank you, Squatch True. We just finished talking to David Sirota. These kids are hopped up on electoral doomerism. Good. I think we might do something with David Sirota on this stream as well, coming up. I like Sirota. I always like talking about him. I don't always agree with Sirota, but I really enjoy his perspective as an analysis. And he makes the right people really, really mad. So we might not always agree. You
can count on
Sirota
me.
might not be the exact kind of socialist that we are, that we want him to be. But I appreciate Sirota a lot, and I like talking to him. Arachnozak, thanks for the gifted sub as well. We got a hype train close, folks. We're close to a hype train. Now, so you've been talking about electoral doomerism. Here's what we are talking about here today. I really just set it all up right prior to the stream. I was just about to kind of pivot. We are spending some time today talking about the new Cold War, talking about the Western elites and imperialists.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Oh my god, Lucid, thanks for the gifted sub. Thank you, Lucid. Why are we getting A-list streamers gifting subs in here, chat? I'm sorry. I don't like berating chat for this kind of thing. That is not, you got to be better. Okay? A-list professional streamers should not be coming here gifting subs. Please. About to pivot to Asia, if you will. Yes. The basic premise that we're talking about here today.
You have good old
now
Rob
people are interrupting.
to talk you through all this.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Even Pam Palmer is in here interrupting me. Ridiculous. Oh my goodness.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
I can't even talk now. This is very frustrating. Frankly, I don't think Lucid appreciates you removing their agency and self-determination. That might be true as well. Okay. Are you finished now, folks? Are you finished interrupting me? I would like to talk about serious business here.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Okay.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I'm trying to be serious. I'm trying to talk about serious business. I'm trying to talk about serious geopolitical issues here. And frankly, I don't appreciate people in this chat constantly interrupting me by giving money to the stream.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We simply
it's really
use
hard
the computer to mark up the size of the account.
It's really hard to concentrate on focus. I had just done, right prior to this stream, an expert pivot.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I had just expertly pivoted right to the subject of the day. I had set the table
We simply
totally.
use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
I had set the table perfectly to pivot to today's subject matter. First, I get interrupted by Lucid with a raid of several hundred viewers, right when I'm about to start getting into the important subject matter of the day. And now this. And now this tomfoolery. I'm seeing...
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
I'm seeing shenanigans. I'm seeing tomfoolery. A lot of tomfoolery.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Horseplay? Not really horseplay. I mean, some jocularity. Oh my goodness.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hijinks. I see dead people. Pinot Noir superstar. I don't know a lot about wine, but I do enjoy a nice Pinot Noir. That's the only thing I know about wine. Whenever I go to get wine, I'm just like, I'll have one Pinot Noir, please.
You
and
can
it just
count
automatically
on me.
makes
You're going
you...
to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
It automatically gives you this kind of credibility. People are like, this guy knows what his business.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
I meant for that to go to Marina. Didn't finish it. Marinad. We got brand new community member Marinad now. I like a Cabernet, the people's wine. It automatically lets everyone know you watch Sideways. You're just not a Merlot, right, Ghost? Just don't give me a fucking Merlot, please.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I'm literally running out of time to talk about the serious business that I wanted to talk about today. Like, it was a bit before, but it's getting serious now. All the Giamatti heads in chat. Character actor Paul Giamatti, wonderful. Okay. Sparkling grape juice. I barely even drink at all, these days. I'm like 99% sober caucus. I'm like 99% there. I may just go all the way with it. The thing is, I don't,
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I don't like totally closing myself off. Sometimes I like having one drink or two drinks.
You've just become an elite member
Jesus.
of the Friendship Triangle.
Or 3 drinks. Never above 3. Very, very rarely do I ever go above 3. That's like maybe once or twice a year, maybe. The other day I had one beer. I literally had one beer with Andre Goulet of Harbinger Media. Came over to have a beer, and I had a single beer. And the whole next day I was just like tired. I was just like, ugh. I'm not hungover, like I have a headache or feel sick or anything like that. But just like, ugh, I just want to sleep. I just can't even process it anymore. No, I know that, Outrun. I know. We only drink water? That's probably something that I should do as well. In fact, if you're finished interrupting me now, that we hit your precious sub goal, chat's always insisting that we hit that sub goal. And I'm trying to say, no, it's not about the money for me. It's not about money. I'm trying to do good work here. I'm trying to do interesting commentary for people. And chat is always just repeatedly, no, we have to hit the sub goal. Boo, 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 boo. I'm trying to educate people. I'm trying to inform people. I'm trying to again, we've got this massive wave of Red Scare propaganda, and I'm trying to deprogram people from that. It's not about money. It's not about subs. It's not about gifted subs, friend coin, tips, which you can also, there's a tip function if you see in the chat sometimes, which you can access by doing the exclamation point donate command. It's not about the tips, the subs, the gifted subs. He's a socialist. If you keep giving him money, he's going to be able to afford a house and then he'll get canceled. That's right. That's why some of you, I think, are with the CIA, are trying to get me canceled by giving me too much money. We had to force Rob to put a sub counter on the screen. He wanted to do it for free. I was trying to say it. I don't want this, okay? I don't want to gamify and monetize this. And chat was just like, we will not watch. We're not going to watch the stream.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We're not going to watch the stream anymore if you don't put that chat counter on there. You think I like this, chat? You think this is fun for me? I'm a human being, okay? I'm a human being. I'm not an object that you can just throw money at. I'm a human being. I've got thoughts and feelings and emotions. Stop objectifying me by paying me. Please. Oh, I'm just this thing. I'm just this person on a screen for you, and you can just throw money at him, right? Just throw a dance, monkey. Just throwing money at me. It makes me sick. Frankly. Jesus. I'm just going to wait the last 50 seconds here to this segment is finally over. I've literally lost viewers. I had viewers coming here with Lucid Stream, and rather than talking about anything interesting or important, I've just been doing this. And now I've like 100 people have been like, well, I'm going to watch another stream where there's someone like talking about important business now. Way to go, chat. Way to go. Twitch Zoodle, do not feed the Rob. Did we cover China? No, I'm trying to talk about that. I've been trying to talk about that now for the last like 25 minutes. I'll never gift again. Thank you, 10,000 sandwiches. Thank you. Anyway, let me go back now. Let me go back now and at the 10 whole minutes. Jesus. Thank you, 10,000 sandwiches for the gifted sub. Thank you so much to my friend Pam Palmater. Very, very generous, Pam, for the 5 gifted subs. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you, King Fisher, for the 5 gifted subs. I really appreciate that, King Fisher. Thank you, G Cluppy, stream and chat hater, G Cluppy, for the 5 gifted subs as well, which you did to own me and to make me angry, which worked. Thank you, G Cluppy. Thank you, Drake Sin, for the gifted tier 1 sub. Thank you, Top Scruffy, for the gifted sub. Thank you, Ezo Breezo, for the 100 friend coin. Thank you, Old Thumbs, for the gifted tier 1 sub. Thank you to Pam Palmater again, extremely generous Pam, for the 200 friend coin. Thank you, Dimitri, for the 100 friend coin. Thank you, Arachnozak, for another 100 friend coin. Thank you, Part Ian, for the 2 gifted tier 1 subs. Thank you to Outrun for the gifted sub to Marinad. And another gifted sub to Clueless. Thank you, Outrun. Anonymous Gifter. Thank you for the gifted sub to Paul Giamatti's son. While we're talking about Paul. Thank you very much, Ms. Squatch, for the 5 gifted subs. Very much appreciate the entire Squatch family, both Mr. and Mrs. Squatch, and of course, famous community cat, Snacks, which you can see in the TRRS Discord server. Thank you, Ms. Squatch, and thank you, Arachnozak, for the gifted sub as well. That about does it. Now that I've lost like 150 viewers who are just like, oh, this is just like a money thing. This is just one of these like money. This guy just loves money. That's all he cares about. I'm going to tune into a different channel that's going to have interesting and informative discussions. Now that is over, I set the table so well prior to all this. I set the table so well. I was really thinking to myself, like, nicely done. Nicely done. Rob, expert streamer, does it again. Now, that was like 20 minutes ago now. The point is, though, that like we were talking about people like Mark Hamill and Stephen King and people that have obviously had their brains melted by being inundated with Red Scare propaganda when they were kids that just can't seem to overcome that. And how our like ruling class, the imperialists, the capitalists, the elites, whatever you want to call it, people that control our society, they kind of fell asleep at the wheel in the end of history period. Then after 9/11, they took their finger off the Red Scare propaganda button and leaned really hard on the like Islamophobic, Islamic extremism propaganda button, and kind of really focused on that for 20 straight years. And now we're coming into this period where they've kind of stopped that again. And now that they've realized that China is on the verge of like surpassing them as this global hegemon, and surpassing them both as the top global economy and the top country that's going to start offering a deal to developing countries in the global south in exchange for their resources or access to their resources. People that run our society have realized that they've got kind of bamboozled. They've been asleep at the wheel, and that's what's happening. And now they're overcompensating again by restarting the old new Cold War propaganda machine. It's all chugging away again. They give it a nice little oiling. They give it a couple of kicks and slams or whatever you do, like one of those old TVs or whatever, to get it going again. And that's what we're doing now. And that's one of the main things that we've talked about on this program over the last 2 years. We're coming up on year 3 of doing this show, season 3, which starts in early November. So that's what we were talking about in this pivot to China. And right now, today, we're going to talk about a little bit about China and about this new Cold War situation. And I'm just going to get a beverage, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and talk about that in just a moment. So bear with me. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back, and we can talk about this stuff. Now that I have like an hour and a half and probably nowhere near enough time to get to it, we will finally do this now. Okay, well, one sec. It is Lucid's fault, I agree. Chill stream and then a chair stream. I love this guy. This is really entertaining stuff, isn't it? Orange over easy. New follower, new community member. I love to see those 1 month sub badges. That's one of the things that makes me the happiest. When I see the new community members. That's always really exciting. Anyway, I got a cherry bubbly here, or buble, or whatever it's fucking supposed to be called. I'm the French one here, and I have people criticizing me on my pronunciation of this. A chin chin, everyone. Let's get to this. Let's have a good rest of the stream. Okay? Break.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
How about 21 months? EHHH.
Hell yeah, Ghost. Thank you very much for the 21 months of Tier 1. I like seeing those sub badges as well. And that's one more time. I will just let people know that I will be. I've got a couple of chatters now that are almost at the 2-year mark. So I'm going to make some 2-year sub badges for people. They're letting us know Soviet Russia bad in Stranger Things. The Red Scare is definitely in full effect in pop culture. Yeah, and just like the Russophobic as well. Because like for a lot of these people, the socialism doesn't even matter when it comes to Russia, but it's just like you see how a lot of it is just like Russia bad. That's what animates a lot of it. Okay, so let me just... put that there. Good. Okay. Okay, so here's the first thing that I wanted to look at. This is a good thread by Caitlin Johnstone. Now, I know Caitlin is like somewhat of a controversial figure. I think part of the reason for that is I think early in the Trump era, Caitlin was one of these people that was like advocating that we need to like make alliances with and work with the far right. And I think correctly took a lot of criticism for that. It wanted to work with people like Mike Cernovich against ending the wars and stuff like that, was kind of like pulled into this kind of camp, which I think is never something that I agreed with and was always pretty silly. So someone who took a lot of criticism for that. Does she still have that position? Well, I don't think so, because I think she got criticized so much for it that she moved away from it. And I think she does understand now that these people on the right, even if they do sometimes have more nuanced or more correct viewpoints about some of these foreign policy issues, my understanding is that recognizes that these people are not necessarily allies. Like the thing that I've been talking about on this, like we talk about right-wingers that have these more correct foreign policy views all the time. But I think the lens that we need to understand that is like, that's actually a bad sign that liberals and social democrats and like pro-NATO leftists are abdicating their responsibility to have the correct viewpoints on this, which leaves the opportunity for people on the right to make more nuanced criticisms of Russia and Ukraine, or make more nuanced criticisms of the military state or the security state. That is a huge problem, right? It's not that these people are our allies, but what it is, though, is it indicates how they're being given this great opportunity to organize around this issue and to recruit people into their camp by having more correct viewpoints on some of these issues than a lot of or all mainstream liberals. Okay. And despite sometimes having issues where we might agree on foreign policy issues, when you look into the rest of what these fucking people believe, they have horrible beliefs and incorrect ideas and incorrect opinions about a number of other social issues, the role of the state, the welfare state, things like this, racism, transphobia, LGBTQIA issues in general, a whole lot of horrible reactionary regressive issues. And when we allow them to co-opt these left-wing talking points about foreign policy, it allows them to recruit more people into their camp, and brings them down this reactionary path that we don't want people to follow. So no one should ever get that twisted. When we hear like people like Tucker Carlson or Maxime Bernier or any of these like fucking right-wing weirdos advancing a sort of foreign policy opinion or a critique of the security state that we might agree with, no one should ever get confused about whether or not these people are allies or not. What we should be alarmed by, though, is the fact that they're able to advance these opinions because mainstream liberals, along with social democrats and leftists in general, have kind of abdicated their responsibility when it comes to these issues, and it gives them that opportunity. That's something we need to push back on. And we need to carve out space, as we do in this very community, for a decidedly socialist left-wing vision of anti-imperialism and these security state critiques that does not go down the reactionary path that these right-wing guys do. Anyway, I just wanted to address that because that's one of the criticisms that Caitlin took in the past. And I do appreciate the commentary and the work she does about these kind of anti-imperialist issues. And I agree with her about a lot of stuff. I just wanted to preface that. So here's looking at the ways that the Biden administration is going full steam ahead with this new Cold War, right? The pivot to Asia happened under Obama, under Biden, and the Biden administration is showing no sign of Trump continued it, and Biden is showing no sign of slowing it down and is in fact exponentially increasing it. And this is another issue where liberals are heavily on board with this idea, as are a lot of left-wing people, as we see on Twitch about the deranged commentary that we hear about China. They get these views from right-wing media like Tucker. Mike from PA pointed out that conservative thought is really organized and have their aim on China. Materially, a U.S.-Russia alliance is more beneficial for capital in the long run, since they need Russia to beat China. And this is what we were talking about earlier. The Dems and libs in general, however, are trying to have their cake and eat it too, so to speak. That's the real problem, right? Is that a lot of right-wingers are having these critiques of the security state or imperialist activity when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, and they want to take that energy and pivot it more towards China, and liberals are trying to do both at the same time. Always disgusting to see this country effortlessly throwing billions, if not trillions, into this while gaslighting their own people about why they can't have basics like healthcare, clean water, free education. It's such a mindfuck. It is. It's amazing the idea that Americans have internalized this idea that when we spend anything on social spending, even when I get a check in the mail, even when I personally benefit, overall though it's bad because it creates inflation, it creates all these problems. No one wants to work anymore, yada, yada, yada. We can't afford to have healthcare. We can't afford to have free college. How are you going to pay for it? And then it's like almost $1 trillion a year in military spending. No problem. $1 trillion per year, almost. What does it sell? Close to 800 billion annually? And they're just like, yep, we need to do that. We need to do that because our enemies are they'll just destroy us if we don't spend $800 billion a year directly from the money printing machine in the U.S. government, directly into the pockets of the weapons manufacturers and their CEOs and shareholders. That's zero problem here. Heritage Foundation told me our military is weak, though. That's right. It's the they-them army, Lucid. Our weak they-them army is being underfunded. It's being defunded by these liberals. The woke ideology. Very unfortunate. And a couple tens of billions of proxy wars. That's the amazing thing, too, about Ukraine, right? It's like we can't even we can't even fund this proxy war using the almost $1 trillion of military spending that we spend annually. We have to actually increase. We have to add more. Like, it has to be separate from that. We're not taking it out of the $800 billion pie. We're going to toss on another $50 billion on top of that stuff. You know, of course we wouldn't take that out of the regular $800 billion. We already got there. We already got that. That's all accounted for. You can't have high-speed rail and clean air, but you'll sleep better knowing that all the money is going to a manufactured conflict at the other end of the world. Yeah, and to pay e-girls for military psyops. That's correct. Yeah. So let's look at this thread from Caitlin about what the U.S. government is up to as it pertains to China right now. And if we have time, I wanted to get to that breakthrough news clip with one of the editors at Dongsheng News. About the Communist Party of China in its 20th Congress. How long is that video? 42 minutes. Okay, that's cutting it close. We gotta kind of speed run through the rest of this now. Which e-girls? There's like TikTok e-girls. They're like military TikTok e-girls. That's the thing that's happening now. Anyway, let's read this. Take a look at this thread. Yes, I can play it at 1.5 speed, or maybe 1.25. We'll get there. I can go till like 4 realistically. So, okay. So here's this thread from Caitlin Johnstone. The Pentagon is seeking sweeping new powers in preparation for a war with China. The Senate NDAA bill increases proposed military aid to Taiwan from $4.5 to $10 billion. And Blinken is claiming without evidence that Beijing has already greatly accelerated its plans to annex Taiwan. Even that, that's a huge leap just this year. A doubled military aid to Taiwan to $10 billion. And like I talked about before, this has come up before. I know it's hard for Americans and Westerners to understand this concept, but when you're funneling tens of billions of dollars worth of arms and military aid to an island directly off the coast of the country that you're trying to destabilize. I know people say that this is like a defensive thing and you're only doing it so that poor defenseless Taiwan can defend themselves. But just as Russia viewed all the military aid and the arming of Ukraine as a direct threat to their security, which actually ended up causing them to act by invading Ukraine. Similarly, I don't know any country in the world that wouldn't view this as being a threat to their security and their sovereignty and their prosperity. When you've got the largest military in the world, the greatest imperial power in the world, funneling tens of billions of dollars to this island right off their coast, which is literally part of their country, which is acknowledged by everyone on all sides of the conflict. It's literally part of the country. And it's hard to understand. It's hard for Americans to understand anyway, that they actually view that as being a threat to their sovereignty and actually increases the likelihood that they're going to try and reabsorb Taiwan to their country and not decreases it. I know this is very difficult for people in the West to wrap our minds around because we think everything is a defensive alliance. NATO is a defensive alliance. AUKUS, it's just a defensive alliance. We're arming Ukraine and Taiwan and defensively. I know it's very hard for people on the pro NATO and pro CIA and pro American imperialism left, like fucking Vosh. Yeah, let's all name names here. I know it's hard for them to understand that not everything is defensive, even if the people that run these programs say that it is. But that is not how China is going to view it. It's not how Russia is going to view it. It's not how any country would view it. Certainly, that's not how America would view it. If China or Russia was arming separatists in Texas or Florida with tens of billions of dollars of military spending, I think we all know that the United States would not view that as being done defensively, and they would just nuke those places out of existence or bomb them into the fucking Stone Age immediately. I look forward to us getting rinsed. I mean, you kind of have to, you can't help but yeah, I want to see that. Or Cuba. I mean, I use Florida or Texas because these are literally part of the United States, as Taiwan is part of China, as widely acknowledged by everyone. What if the Soviet Union wanted to install ICBMs on Cuba? I guess it's just this hypothetical scenario. We'll never know. We'll never know what would happen. Taiwan is not part of China. It literally is, though. That's the thing, Larry Picklejar. It quite literally is. So I don't know what to tell you. But it quite literally is the same fucking country. Yeah, but we'll just never know. We'll just never know what would happen if anyone tried to put ICBMs in Cuba and how America would react. I'm sure they'd be totally okay with it. I'm sure they would be totally okay with it. Hot take, China's Xinjiang maneuver was in response to CIA brewing Uyghur resistance. Honestly, Ricky, I know maybe that might be a hot take and where our discourse is at now. On this channel, though, that's a lukewarm take. I think that's like just an obvious truth. I love how Stacey Abrams broke out the China bad rhetoric at the last Georgia debate. Like, who is this for?
Well,
that's the thing. It's like Americans are fully on board.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account. American
liberals are fully on board with this. The Biden administration is going full speed ahead on the China bad thing, so it's not surprising. It's not surprising that Stacey Abrams would say this. You know, did the Democratic Party, which welcomes in with open arms CIA spooks and these military guys into their coalition, of course they think that. Thank you, Dimitri, for the 100 friend coin. So let's keep looking at this. Let's keep looking at this thread. The Pentagon is seeking sweeping new powers in preparation for a war with China. So let's look at this. Pentagon seeks wartime procurement. Have you heard about any of this in the news, by the way, folks? Has this been on anyone's radar? Like, you'd think this seems important to me, right? I'm glad that we can cover it on this program, but it seems like a little weird that we haven't heard more about this. Pentagon seeks wartime procurement powers with the intent to move more aggressively with an eye on the potential for a confrontation with China. They're quite literally preparing aggressively for war with China. Bipartisan legislation introduced in the Senate would grant the Pentagon wartime procurement powers. The intent of the legislation is to spur the Pentagon and industry to move more aggressively by removing bureaucratic barriers with an eye not only on Russia, but the potential for a confrontation with China over Taiwan. Senior congressional aide quoted in this piece, "We can't play around anymore. It's hard to think of something as high on everybody's list as buying a ton of munitions for the next few years for our operational plans against China." Good. And you see also companies like Raytheon, who sponsor many of the think tanks that put out this nonstop stream of China bad propaganda, which is clearly working on many people across the political spectrum. Like the ASPI, Australian think tank, and also credit to Caitlin Johnstone for being one of the few Australians that hasn't had their brain completely melted by this anti-China stuff. Raytheon already profiting immensely from this kind of like shift that's happening. The Senate NDAA
This is some
bill.
guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Gremlo, thank you very much for the raid. Gremlo, very much appreciated. Get in here, Raiders. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Rob. You might know me from Twitter or this very Twitch stream or the Insurgents podcast, or you might not know me at all. I'm a socialist Twitch streamer here in Montreal, Quebec. I talk a lot about news and politics, pop culture, anti-imperialism. Right now we're talking about this new Cold War on China. Smash the follow button if you want to follow the channel. It costs nothing at all to smash that follow button. And that's all. That's the spiel. That's the spiel. Anyway, let's get on because I've been distracted. I've been distracted a whole lot today. Being distracted by very rude people coming in here, raiding the channel, subscribing to the channel, donating money to the channel. It's been very hard to stay on track because of this kind of rudeness, this constant stream of interruption. So if we could keep that to a minimum, please. Thank you. But thank you, Gremlo, for the raid. I appreciate it. And everyone give Gremlo a follow and give Lucid Fox a follow as well. So let's get back to this thread. The Senate NDAA bill increases proposed military aid to Taiwan from $4.5 to $10 billion. Again, a huge increase, which, as I pointed out, any country in the world would view that as being a direct threat to their sovereignty and security when you've got America just exponentially increasing the rate with which they're just pumping weapons and military aid to this country, or not a country, because as we know, it is part of China. Blinken is claiming without evidence that Beijing has greatly accelerated its plans to annex Taiwan. And similarly to Russia and Ukraine, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? When you say over and over again for years that Russia is planning to invade Ukraine, and in response to this, you pump tens of billions of dollars worth of arms and training to these fascist militias in Ukraine, lo and behold, you actually contribute to the conditions which lead to Ukraine being invaded. This is the exact same situation. They're pumping arms and funds and military training to Taiwan and saying China's going to invade any day now. Well, maybe they will if you continue threatening them and threatening their security and sovereignty in the way that you are doing right now. So now you have Blinken saying China plans to annex Taiwan, moving much faster under Xi. China's government is pursuing its plan in the old anti-imperialist garden, the old left-wing guardian. Always great for having these really left-wing viewpoints, right? Just as when the Guardian played an integral role in undermining and destroying Jeremy Corbyn's career. It says China's government is pursuing its plans to annex Taiwan on a much faster timeline under Xi Jinping. The U.S. Secretary of State has said, reiterating warnings of global economic disruption if Taiwan was taken over. The comments by Anthony Blinken come as China's ruling Communist Party meet for their twice-a-decade Congress, the most important meeting of its political cycle. In a major speech opening the conclaves on Sunday, Xi made it clear that his plans for Taiwan remain core to the plans of China's rejuvenation. What did I say? Rejuvenation. In conversation with former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice at Stanford University, look at how bipartisan this is. These liberals and conservatives. Look at how fucking bipartisan it is, you know? In conversation with former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice at Stanford University, Blinken said, peace and stability between China and Taiwan had been successfully maintained for decades, but Beijing had changed its approach. Who has changed their approach, though, really, in this situation? Who has changed their approach, really? It's kind of the United States, as we covered this summer with Nancy Pelosi's whole visit to Taiwan, that has changed its approach. The United States, which authored helped author the One China policy, whose own actions have reiterated that throughout the decades. Nancy Pelosi, the Biden administration, and the United States are the ones that have changed their approach, and here they are increasing military spending, increasing military aid to Taiwan, while simultaneously wagging the finger at China for changing their approach as well. And we don't really need to read the whole Guardian article. Let's go back to this thread. Even as things continue to escalate with Russia, we can expect escalations against China to be supported by most parts of America's two mainstream parties, as well as many of its supposedly nonpartisan free thinkers. And Matt Stoller, a guy who has a number of progressive values on certain issues, is one of the most fucking deranged lunatics when it comes to his takes about China, and is back at it again. He's literally encouraging. He's giving that total right-wing analysis where he's saying we need to stop paying attention to Ukraine. We need to end the war in Ukraine. And he's literally saying the U.S. needs to decouple our supply chains from China and mobilize for war ASAP. I really don't understand the empathy. Matt Stoller just doesn't understand the empathy. The apathy. I really don't understand the apathy. Matt Stoller doesn't understand the apathy. Why don't people want to pivot to this new war? Why don't we want to pivot to World War III? A fucking civilization-ending conflict between these two competing global hegemons. Why are people apathetic about that? Well, maybe people don't want to have World War III, Matt. Maybe that's one reason. Maybe that's one reason they don't want to have. They're apathetic about that. That's why I'm apathetic about it. I actually think that would be a bad thing for the United States to pivot to war with China, which would that is World War III. That's what we're talking about. Ukraine isn't enough, apparently. They're already bored. Well, that's what I mean. It's like Matt is saying, yeah, we need to, liberals are saying we need to do both. We need to fight a proxy war with Russia in Ukraine, and we need to fight a proxy war with Russia, with China in Taiwan. which famously, again, I'm not like a military expert. Famously, I believe that's what they say, though, right? If you want to have a big global conflict, you open it up on two fronts, right? Don't they say that? That's the way you really win a big global conflict, and that's what liberals are doing. And Matt, at least to his credit, is saying like, no, we should just do one of those things, but still a completely deranged fucking opinion, right? And he's always been like Stoller has been doing this for years now. They're the new Nazi Germany. He's absolutely fucking unhinged when it comes to this. Liberals need at least 2 to 3 wars going these days. And again, that's how you're successful in the geopolitical chess game. That's what they never expect. They never expect you to open up 2 major wars on 2 fronts. It's the last thing they expect. That's why you got to do it. We need to be at war with East Asia and Eurasia. Again, this is a basic concept that these people are not able to handle. They've seen the F-35s crashing all over the place, haven't they? Yeah. You think that they would have. You'd think that they would have a more realistic understanding of this, but I don't know. Don't ask me to explain it. It's our bad for forgetting we voted for Raytheon's CEO during the presidential election. Got to print those names on the ballots. That's right. Let's make it a little more clear, at least. Let's make it a little more clear. And then, yeah, to Caitlin's credit, I was talking about up front, she used to kind of be open to this idea of working with the right, which she got a lot of criticism for, I think correctly. And then she says at the end, but sure, tell me more about how Biden is a Xi Jinping puppet, you MAGA morons. So good for her for coming to that conclusion. Maybe a little bit too late, but she got there. I have to look at this tweet. Reddit is a prime example of how this how well this anti-China propaganda campaign has been working. And I had to look at this tweet because it's so cursed. This is one of the worst things I've ever seen. Reddit is like ground zero for like the deranged anti-China sentiment. There are a few subreddits that are slightly sane. There's the Arsino subreddit, which is good. There's Jen Zedong, which is good on this. Overall, though, Reddit is just an absolute hive of the most deranged fucking anti-China rhetoric. And I have to look at this post from Reddit because it's so cursed and so painful to look at, but I just have to do it. I'm sorry. So this is from the Fuck the CCP subreddit. There's that classic thing of like, mods will hate this, but fuck the CCP. Like they think it's like the most edgiest thing you can do on Reddit to say this, when it's literally the prevailing opinion of like 95% of people that use the website. Oh my God, fuck the CCP. Ooh, oh my God. That's so crazy that you would say that. Can they say that? I guess not. I don't know. It's unbelievable. God, this is so bad. I'm sorry for subjecting you to this. We'll watch the informative breakthrough news segment after this to have some mental rehabilitation. So it says, just a friendly reminder, Xi Mingzhe, the daughter of Xi Jinping, goes to Harvard University. The daughter of the Hitler of our time got an education here. Any thoughts? I don't know what. Putin is Hitler. Apparently Xi Jinping is Hitler. How? How is Xi Jinping Hitler? I don't understand. They just view this as being like an obvious thing that you don't need to expand on. What countries has China invaded under Xi Jinping? Even Reddit is one of the places that have been totally obsessed with the Xinjiang narrative. Like I've been saying a few weeks ago, even the Washington Post is putting out articles about this, saying like, oh yeah, all these re-education centers are all empty now. Literally this so-called genocide that all these people are obsessed with. Even the CIA affiliated, like Western imperialists supporting a propaganda outlet in the Washington Post is saying like, no, this actually is not going on anymore. It's still very scary and dystopian, but not, even the bad things that we were saying was happening are not happening. So I don't know where they're fucking getting this, but they still, regardless of any of that, they still believe it. And then here's the comment, and I'm sorry for subjecting you to it. It's so bad. From Reading Reddit. Says it's always, and this is really like the Western mindset when it comes to like China or any of the Asian countries that they don't like. The colonizer mindset really comes out. Says it's always been my fantasy to get her pregnant and have her take me home and introduce me to her pops so I could see the look on this dictator's face when he lays his eyes on his new fat, white, degenerate English teacher son-in-law, says this man. Just a normal thought to have. Totally normal and cool that's the first thing you think of. I'm sure Xi Jinping's daughter is just fucking dying to hook up with one of these motherfuckers. I'm sure she just lies awake in bed at night fantasizing about being with one of these fucking losers. Jesus Christ. No, it's a horror. This is literally one of the worst things that I've seen. This is what people on Reddit believe, like by and large. Real Reddit moment on this. Anyway, I had to show you that. I know 98% like it, of course. I had to show that to you. Let's get to this clip now. I have to rush through this a little bit. Let's get to this clip. Now that we're talking about the ways that the Biden administration and Western imperialists are really heavily pivoting towards this, and as they're doing that, all this xenophobic, anti-China, new Red Scare, new Cold War propaganda is going to ramp up. If we thought it was bad now, it's going to ramp up even more. And if anything does happen in Taiwan, just as we saw with Russia, it's going to be a massive, full-scale propaganda blitz, which we're still in the middle of when it comes to Russia. And I think as crazy as that has been over the last couple of weeks, it's going to be even more intense if anything does happen with China and Taiwan. But is that going to happen? I don't know. But in order to understand what is happening in China and what happened with this Communist Party of China 20th Congress, let's look at this breakthrough news video with Brian Becker and Tings Chak, who's a researcher at the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research and a member of the Dongsheng News Collective, to talk about this 20th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. I'm really looking forward to this clip. I think it should be really informative if we want to understand what China's actual aims and goals are and intentions are right now. So let's look at that, because like I said, this propaganda campaign is still heating up. It's been increasing in severity over the last 2 years that we've been doing this show. It hasn't even come close to reaching its apex yet. So if we want to have the mental tools to counteract that, let's try and actually listen to people talk in a non-biased, Western propaganda way about what the actual aims and goals of the Chinese government are. That's going to give us the tools that we need to deprogram ourselves and to become immune to propaganda. As we've seen, a lot of our friends and family members and community members are not immune to propaganda, as we've seen over the last couple of months. If you come here to this stream, though, you will be immune to propaganda. So, and this is how we help get ourselves there. So let's watch this clip with Brian Becker at Breakthrough News. Here we go.
We need a new system. We need a new society. We need to demand that which may have sounded impossible even a few weeks ago, but is not only realizable, but an imperative necessity.
It boosted.
The 20th Party Congress of the Communist Party of China is still in session in Beijing. Today we'll be talking about the leadership and its political orientation at the Congress in an international political environment that's increasingly complex and dangerous. Welcome to this week's episode of the Socialist Program. I'm your host, Brian Becker. Today we'll be talking once again with Tings Chak. Tings is a researcher at the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. She's a member of the Dongsheng News Collective, and she's the author of the pamphlet, Serve the People, the Eradication of Extreme Poverty in China.
And I think Dongsheng has a great video about this as well that goes into this. I wanted to watch the Brian Becker interview, but I think there's a great video on Dongsheng News that covers this whole 20th Congress as well, which maybe we can look at next week.
Jack, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Great pleasure. Tings, this is a major event in China. It happens every 5 years. The new leadership, or the old leadership, if it's reelected, is selected or elected once again. The party gets an opportunity to identify the key problems, challenges facing the party, facing the country. The Communist Party of China has been the ruling party since 1949, a consequence of a 27-year-long civil war that started in the 1920s, ended in 1949. China since
gotta get Blinken with that
1949 has
Havana syndrome,
completely
for sure.
shifted, changed, and impacted not only the people in China, but the global political environment. When you look at this party Congress, which is still in session, and there will be important decisions that will be made later, so we don't know the final outcome, what's your big takeaway?
So I think it's a great question. Of course, as you highlighted, it's already still in session until Saturday, and so we're waiting with our um, waiting for the results. But I think one of the things that is clear is from what we can draw from the report that President Xi Jinping gave to kick off the Congress on Sunday. And of course, this is not his own report, but a report on behalf of the outgoing 19th National Congress, which took over a year to prepare. And so, really, every word counts. So I would say that there's a couple of takeaways, and it really is in the details. And I think it helps indicate some of the direction that the country has been going in since Xi Jinping came into power at the 18th National Congress, look back onto what has happened and also where we're heading in the future. And I would say the first word, and I went into the details today, is looking at modernization. And this word was actually used 33 times, I think probably more than any other concept, maybe just more than Marxism. And I counted, it was 30 times. But I think the question of what kind of modernization and through what means, and this Congress and in the report already showed a strong statement around distinguishing a path of modernization from the Western capitalist modernization. And so it's often repeated, one that is socialist and one that is Chinese. And in this particular report, there are 5 characteristics that she laid out, which is the Chinese path to modernization, looking at the fact that it has a massive population, the question of how do we achieve common prosperity, how do we uplift both the material and the cultural advancement of the people, this question of balance between humanity and nature, and then peaceful development. And I just want to pull one thing that I think was really important is that in the process of pursuing the Chinese path of modernization, and I'm quoting here, he says that China will not tread the old path of war, colonization, and plunder taken in some countries, that brutal and blood-stained path of enrichment at the expense of others caused great suffering for the people of developing countries. So here, I think it's quite a strong statement around, affirming the fact that people of the third world, of the global south, shouldn't necessarily be condemned to a history of, underdevelopment and poverty.
You mean they have a plan for? You mean to tell me they have a plan for moving society forward instead of an insane system of grifting and raiding the government coffers for private gain? And this constant back and forth between different factions of the reactionary capitalist party that deliver nothing for like actual citizens of the country? Crazy. I know. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. Imagine having an actual leader. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? It'd be nice having an actual leader, and it would be nice having a system of government that could actually deliver gains to people that live in the country. I know it's a crazy concept. It's a crazy concept for Westerners to wrap your mind around when there's a government that can like deliver positive benefits to the people that live in the society, but it would be nice, wouldn't it? It would be nice to have that.
But have a possibility of crafting its own path towards modernization, and one that has, a path to national sovereignty. So I think the first one is really about this question.
We need to launch a war against these people
Chinese
today.
Organization.
Thank you.
And the second, I think, is, I was counting a lot of words, is there's a lot less market and a lot more people. And you can see that, and account into comparing the last, Congresses. She mentioned market 18 times in this speech, which was half of what Hu Jintao mentioned 10 years ago, and which was a third of what Jiang Zemin mentioned 20 years ago.
What's going on here?
So in a way, we're looking at, through the decades, a more focus, less on the market. And what we're seeing instead of that is a lot of emphasis on people-centered development, people-centered philosophy. And I think this is something that it's very subtle in the words, but it's a shift towards a more economic-centered strategy, really that period of, developing the productive forces quickly to now this new era under Xi Jinping towards focusing on the people and a variety of other measures on that.
Pressing the socialism
That's
button.
interesting, and I want to help frame this issue of the usage of particular words for everyone, because people unfamiliar with this may not be.
I'll be right back, folks. Okay.
Subtlety.
I'll be right back. I'm just gonna go. I'm a little hungry. I'm gonna go make a sandwich, and I'm gonna be listening to this from the other room. I'll be gone for like 2 minutes, and I'll be right back.
Or the subtlety that at least we think we're observing. China had a socialist revolution led by a communist party in 1949, as I mentioned in the beginning, and for the first decades pursued a policy that did not include the facilitation or promotion of a private market, meaning using capitalist property relations as a stimulus for economic development. It was more or less a largely publicly owned economy with social planning. And then there was the opening up reforms in the late 1970s. And so China developed, as a conscious, intentional act, a hybrid economic model that included foreign direct investment from capitalist corporations, the allowance of privatization of some parts of the economy inside of China, meaning allowing a capitalist class, business owners, entrepreneurs to develop. And at the same time, maintained a strong state sector, both state-owned enterprises and in the way planning and credit allocation took place, such that the state really was still directing the economy big picture, even though there was a market. So what you're suggesting is that by Xi Jinping mentioning the market in many fewer times than a decade ago, the previous leadership or the leadership before that, that the emphasis is changing. It's not an abandonment of the other model, this hybrid mixed economy model, but in terms of emphasis being more on the socialist sector. And I want to ask you about that because Xi Jinping, right in the beginning of his speech, he's going out of his way to reaffirm Marxism, reaffirm Marxism-Leninism, reaffirm the founding principles and the founding values of the party, reaffirming Mao Zedong thought. I mean, these are, within the context of Chinese, the usage of words, these all have a very significant meaning. Go ahead.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that historical context is important to understand. When Deng Xiaoping came into power, in the late 1970s, there's a recognition that the country was highly underdeveloped still, and that there needed to be a shift in the direction. And that required an access to the capital, especially foreign capital and direct investment, as you mentioned, but also the technology, the know-how, and the education. So that was a process of the opening up reform period that we've seen really that marked the last 40 years. And in that period, actually, was a decision taken by the CPC to shift from the focus on, class struggle, the main struggle against the bourgeoisie, between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, to one of really thinking about developing the productive forces, how to create the material conditions so that China could be on a stronger footing. So now in this, what we call the new era under Xi, is a shift away in some ways of this economic-centered strategy that marked the opening up reform period and towards something that is now being framed as a people-centered modernization. That is a phrase that has entered in the Xi period.
Let me ask you about COVID-19. Xi Jinping, in his work report in the opening, talks about COVID-19. Do you detect any shift? Of course, in the West, where I'm in the United States, I'm in New York City. In addition to the endless demonization of Xi Jinping, every time you read an article or a headline in the Western media about China and about this Congress, it's always the authoritarian Xi Jinping, the authoritarian this, the authoritarian that. I mean, it's nonstop demonization. But one of the big points of speculation in the Western media is, will China move away from its zero COVID policy? What did Xi say?
I mean, I think this is one of the outcomes we're waiting to hear more about in terms of what is an assessment of the COVID policy and then also what is the direction moving forward. I think in the report, it's not enough for us to get a sense of. My personal thoughts are the zero COVID strategy is the strategy of the government, but in terms of how it will be implemented, or it's basically, I would say, a strategy that's taken on many different forms since the beginning of the pandemic when it broke out in 2019. So we imagine continue to kind of dynamically shift and change. So we don't know exactly yet what will come with the COVID policy.
The speech by Xi Jinping has many sort of phrases, not many, but they're certainly emphasized that China and the Chinese people have to prepare for a stormy period. And of course, we know here in the United States, the U.S. reoriented its military and foreign policy in 2018 and is preparing the country militarily, politically, propagandistically, in all ways for a major power conflict, meaning first and foremost with China. Anyway, stormy, he's saying we have to prepare. We have to safeguard our independence. We have to safeguard our revolution. We won't be deterred. We will, with confidence, succeed. But it's clearly, it has the sense of a party or a country preparing for conflict.
I mean, I think it's important to understand that in the last few years, there's been, especially with the rising escalations of recent months, there's a worry that, this will turn into a war, or at least a hot war. But at the same time, I think there's a recognition that this conflict has already begun in terms of hybrid warfare. We've seen it for the last few years in the form of economic sanctions, media disinformation, the kind of long-arm jurisdiction, interference in the internal affairs of the country, and we're seeing that escalating, especially on the technological front. The U.S. policy of sort of so-called choke points with the semiconductor part, which is something that China is still significantly behind the U.S. on. And so I think in the report, you do see a lot of emphasis on security, on defense, around strengthening a national unity and being prepared for what he called exactly worst case scenarios, to be able to withstand, I think, heavy winds, choppy waters, and dangerous storms. But I think it's important to mention that these aggressions have already been escalating and felt by the people here, and it's not something that will start to happen, but it's something that has already begun.
Yeah. I'm going to read to you a little bit from Xi's speech. In response to separatist activities aimed at, quote, Taiwan independence, close quote, and gross provocations of external interference in Taiwan affairs, we have resolutely fought against separatism and countered interference, demonstrating our resolve and ability to safeguard China's sovereignty and territorial integrity and to oppose, quote, Taiwan independence, again, always using independence in quotes. We have strengthened our strategic initiative for China's complete reunification and consolidated commitment to the one China principle within the international community. In one way, Tings, you would think this would be an unnecessary set of words, because the United States in 1972 in the Shanghai Communique signed by Nixon and Kissinger and Mao and Zhou Enlai, the U.S. acknowledged that Taiwan is indeed part of China, and that the status of Taiwan ultimately will be determined by the people on both sides of the Taiwan Straits, meaning Chinese people. And the fact that here we are 50 years later in 2022, and Xi Jinping in the early part of his speech has to talk about provocations and the determination to break Taiwan away, and that it will never happen, and that the country has complete resolve. I mean, obviously Taiwan will or is being a flashpoint, not because China is moving aggressively.
What's going on here?
I mean, when you look at what
I was muted.
relations
No,
are
not
between
anymore.
China and Taiwan, they've been economic relations over the past couple of decades. They've been peaceful, but suddenly the specter of possible a war over Taiwan, and it's just again for our audience, say for people tuning in for the first time to this show, who might think like, why is Taiwan such a big deal? And of course, Taiwan is in fact central to U.S.-China relations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's important.
And if you're wondering what I'm eating here, just quick description. This is kind of a variation on the sandwich I mentioned yesterday, the spicy egg boy, which I'm tentatively calling it. This is not a breakfast thing, though. There's no egg. It's not toasted. It's an egg bun. And I got some spicy chorizo, some mozzarella cheese, some hot peppers, and spicy sauce and mayo on there. And just got a couple of olives as well. Just a couple of olives on the side to munch on after.
Important, and we had a nice conversation the last time I was on the show about the Taiwan question, is the fact that this process of reunification has always been, the aspiration of the Chinese people, and since the founding of the People's Republic of China. But at the same time, and in a later part in the speech, he talks about how the wheels of history are rolling on towards China's reunification and rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. I mean, I think it's important to know that this, as you've rightly mentioned, this process of pushing forward these wheels of history in some ways have actually been egged on or provoked by these U.S. aggressions, of course, most highlighted by Nancy Pelosi's visit to the island, which is in direct contravention of all the international agreements and bilateral agreements and sort of the rules of the game. So I think it's important to say that China's actually been acting on a relatively measured way in light of the fact that U.S. has completely exactly worked against the rules of the game that have been determined since 1972 between the two countries. But so there was a very strong, I think, emphasis on reiterating what is already known, that the Taiwan question is a matter for the Chinese people on both sides of the straits. And I think it's also important, I mean, she mentioned in there that the strive for peaceful reunification is going to be done with the greatest sincerity and effort, because no one actually wants to see a military conflict. But the fact is, the renouncing of force is, and I'm quoting here, we will never renounce the use of force if necessary, only directed at these attempts at interference. We're talking about foreign interference in internal affairs and at certain sectors that are promoting a separatist agenda.
Tings, there's another important part of the speech where Xi Jinping talks about China's economic growth. He mentions the fact that in the last decade, since he became head of state, the Chinese economy's share of world production has grown about 7.5%, that it's almost 18% of world production of goods and services. 18%, that's huge, almost 1/5. When you think back to 1945, at the end of World War II, the United States, with a population of 4 or 5%, had 50% of the world's production of goods and services. This was an enormous privilege and a demonstration of economic power. Not to mention the fact that the United States also at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 insisted and succeeded on making the US dollar the world reserve currency. And the US dollar, other countries had to buy it to use it for trade, but the US could just print it. So the US had this huge advantage.
Sorry to hear that little cold
Now,
bee.
China has grown economically, and Xi Jinping's statistical sort of account demonstrates that. China is not trying to challenge US dominance. It's not trying to become a replacement hegemon. There's nothing in China's foreign policy that would indicate that. And yet the United States treats China's economic rise as an existential threat. And right before the Congress, and I don't think the timing is a coincidence, President Biden announced that the United States was going to basically embargo, blockade, prevent, make illegal the selling of anything from U.S. technology companies to high-tech companies in China regarding chip development. And of course, the U.S. has an advantage in chips, and chips are central to a high-tech economy. This is a real act of economic aggression, provoked really not because China is doing anything other than growing.
I think it's absolutely correct. We've seen an escalation, a dramatic escalation of this technological war, the so-called policy and the choke points of accessing semiconductors, knowing that that is a weakness for China, or where a technology where it's behind the US. But at the same time, we've been seeing, I think what you're referring to, this
Cracking open a cold one.
This new McCarthyism that's really quite shocking, not only targeting people within the United States, whether they have a Chinese nationality or of Chinese descent, but also now people, with U.S. citizenship working in Chinese companies. There's a kind of threat that they have to stop working for these tech companies or potentially lose their citizenship. So this is a massive escalation. And I think we can see this
for sure.
as a sort of weakness that the
pathogen. Yeah, the U.S. is right. It depends on colonizing the world to export the contradictions produced by capitalist economies. China's more equitable take on world development actually does threaten the profit-making machine. So it is a threat, yeah, but let's be clear about what the threat is, right? And Brandon gave the U.S. chip manufacturers a shitload of money, and they're doing massive layoffs. Awesome country, awesome economy, yeah. And yeah, all these American executives are all quitting in the semiconductor industry. They're all being forced to quit. Yeah, you love the 26th of July movement flag in the background, for sure. Peaceful co-development, what? Can't have that. Cannot have that.
U.S. or sort of fragility it's experiencing this moment that it's resorting to these kinds of tactics it knows best. And I think it's important you mentioned this, the loss of productive capacity, but also in terms of its stature in relation to the rest of the world. When we look back, 20 years ago, 80% of the world's countries traded with the U.S. as their primary trading partner. Look 20 years down the line, that has completely shifted to China. And so that lost productive capacity has also translated into the loss of sort of that relationship, that trading power with the rest of the world. And I think we're also seeing this in terms of what it has to offer.
Quiet quitting has gone too far. Supposedly Brandon's latest round of sanctions really fucked them up. Well, fortunately for the United States, China has no tools with which it can inflict any kind of economic harm on the U.S. So I think they should be A-okay. They should have no problem, right? I'm sure China will just lay back and continue to allow that while not responding in any way. And there's nothing they could do to disrupt the U.S. economy or U.S. society in any way. So they should be all right. They should be A-okay.
The rest of the world, these kinds of initiatives like the Bring Back Better World as a way to contest the China's Belt and Road Initiative. But we're seeing a lot of talk, but at the same time, not a lot of action, because I think the U.S. has actually lost a lot of its ability to produce, but also deliver on these kinds of international development projects.
Yeah, they've lost their ability to produce. I also love when they've framed that China stole all of these jobs. Where did our manufacturing industry go? China, they stole it. It's like you happily gave that away. That was the deal. That was the whole deal of the Thatcher era, the Reagan era, the neoliberal era. You're going to offshore all your manufacturing to them. And American capitalists did this with a fucking smile on their face. They were happy to do it. They were happy to do it. And now they're complaining. How could this have happened? No one knows who did this. How could China do this to us? And it's like, you gave them away to anywhere that would take them. That's right. I do have this at 1.25 speed, yes, because I was running low on time. And yeah, Outrun, like, think if you thought inflation was bad now, just wait till, sorry, I lost the comment. Just imagine your largest consumer goods supplier wrenching up the costs. Yeah, again, of course, China would never do that to anything to disrupt American society or the American economy. Where does a lot of Nance's drunken hubby's money come from? Yeah, a lot of, like, all these powerful capitalists that are right now in the U.S. government and outside the U.S. government. But I repeat myself. Well, if it isn't the consequences of my actions, you have to laugh at the reaction. How could China do this? How could they take all our jobs like this? Fucking amazing. The same people, literally the same people that cheered this along every step of the way and benefited from it immensely every step of the way. There's no way capital will comply if Brandon tried to enforce decoupling. And this is where our boy Deng Xiaoping maybe had a few good ideas, right? Now, even when the U.S. government says, okay, we need to get capital out of China, they're going to be like, well, not so fast. Not so fast. I think it's also part of the reason they're trying to drive down wages further, because they know they'll need to onshore production soon, they being U.S. corps. Yeah, you can't onshore production and give back all those great union jobs, right? That's why we had to get rid of our manufacturing industry in the first place. Deng and his Speedo really got our asses. Yes, he did. Yeah, and where is Pelosi's husband getting all these billions of dollars? It's true. Millions and millions of dollars. Yeah, no, but we can't bring manufacturing back and have all these great paying union jobs. That's why we had to get rid of the manufacturing industry in the first place, was so we didn't have to have those jobs anymore. And we could pay people in China or wherever else, Vietnam or Indonesia or Taiwan, part of China again, or wherever else in the developing world, in South America, Latin America, South America. So we could pay them pennies to do it. Now we can't onshore all this production again and have to pay people actual living wages. That's going to be a huge problem.
Yes. When you think about the U.S., 70,000 bridges, Tings, according to the engineers who are, the bridge engineers in America, the association.
Suppose he's just a shrewd investor.
70,000 of them, according to the engineers, need repair. Some of them need massive repair, and many of them need to be replaced. That's a sign that the U.S. isn't paying attention to infrastructure. It is paying attention every year to the production of more and more excellent nuclear weapons and cruise missiles and aircraft carriers and battleship groups. The U.S. spends almost $1 trillion a year, almost $1 trillion, maybe even a little bit more than $1 trillion when you look into the different departments outside the Department of Defense where military spending is really going on. $1 trillion a year for basically death and destruction for the U.S. military. And we don't have any high-speed trains in the United States. I know you're laughing because you're in China. I mean, let's just talk for the people who have never visited China, like some of the technological progress that China has made during the same decade or two.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the big factors. It's been able to develop, for example, the largest high-speed train network in the world, and I can attest it's one of the most comfortable ways of traveling ever. It's beautiful, and I mean, it's also one of the factors of how, in a way, China has been able to recover more quickly than a lot of the countries out of this COVID moment. There's been a kind of, I think, a lot of questions of how did China manage when the rest of the world has not been able to recover economic growth. Of course, China's in a tough moment in many senses. Consumption is way below pre-pandemic levels. There's a question of youth unemployment, but a big question is this investment into infrastructure and investment into the productive capacity that links back to your other question, and that was part of, I think, the China's growth and also I think the whole global South's economic rise that was parallel to the moment when the North, the West, was relatively stagnating. And this transformation in China of its productive capacity has turned it into, this actually, when you look at manufacturing, it accounts for a third of the global manufacturing. And I think that 18% is more around goods and services, production and services. And so you see that as a big part of driver of economic stability, of economic development, but also a huge part of the poverty alleviation initiatives. A big part being able to uplift these 800 million people out of extreme poverty, especially in the countryside, is through the investment into infrastructure, making sure that the roads, the railways, the internet, the electricity can be built and reach the most remote part of this massive country. And then there we can add in other elements like private capital, investments from other sectors that isn't the state to come in and bring in other forms of investment in capital. So that has been a big part of the whole poverty alleviation process, is in this investment in infrastructure.
It's quite a shocking, astonishing, amazing, find the right adjective, when you think 850 million people coming out of extreme poverty as an intentional plan, as part of a massive anti-poverty program, and something you've written about. And I'll mention your book again before we end so that people can get the book. But that's double the size, more than double the size of the US population. We have 330 million people in the United States. So here you have a country that has taken 800 million people out of extreme poverty who are making less than, I think the Chinese standard for extreme poverty was a little bit different from the world standard, but it was something like $2.3 a day, which is really extreme poverty. And bringing people out of that extreme poverty, and at the same time building all of this infrastructure. And again, the two go together. But my point is, it wasn't only carrying out an anti-poverty program, it was also creating this technological infrastructure. And the number of people going to college, the number of people graduating, the increase in life expectancy, not just for those in extreme poverty, but for all of society. I mean, when you look at a form of governance, and we're not, the point of our show as the Socialist Program is not to make socialist governments look like, the greatest things than sliced bread, the heaven on earth. We're not trying to approach the world with rose-colored glasses or an idealist conception about how politics work, even in a post-capitalist society or a society trying to transition to socialism. But the achievements, when you look at it in its totality, and even with all of the problems, it's an incredibly important success story.
Yeah, we are doing that, Brian. No, but I think that's one of the exciting things about China to me, when we pay attention to this stuff, is that they're not finished, right? We've seen these huge advancements in the 70s, and we're talking about infrastructure. The amazing thing about Chinese infrastructure is not just that, in and of itself, that's so great, but how quickly it has come just from nothing. You look at images of Chinese cities in the fucking 70s and early 80s versus now, and it's just like fucking amazing. To say nothing of the entire cities that have just sprung up from the fucking ground. And when we're talking about that, they're not finished, right? They're part of this decades-long plan of development. That's the exciting thing I think about China now. Not that everything is perfect there, or even though that they've reduced extreme poverty in many ways, that people still aren't living in poverty. Of course people are. And of course there's still problems. But the exciting thing is that they're on this path. And that path has already led to all these massive developments, these observable developments. And what I find exciting and interesting to think about is where that's going to be in another 20 years, right? Not just right now. Right now, we're seeing them as part of in this transition. We're seeing this decades-long transition happening. But where is that transition going to lead China in 2030, 2040, 2050? That's the really exciting thing. That's the thing that I'm very interested in and fascinated and hopeful about. There's a lot of reasons to be cynical about where we're going in the West, where all we can see is decline. All we have to look forward to is further decline. Why the cultural cleansing? I don't really know what you're referring to, Liv Lynn. I live in a settler colonialist country that committed genocide against the indigenous people that lived here, and is really focused on promoting white supremacy and repressing other cultures. When I see China, I don't think it's perfect, but I see a lot of different cultures that are represented. There's big cultural festivals. There's popular celebrities that come from all these different ethnic groups. I don't think it's perfect, but I think compared to our treatment of ethnic minorities in different cultures, it's actually significantly in a better situation than what we have here. Do we treat other cultures with different ethnic groups within our society with respect and dignity? Of course not. Look at our prison system in Canada is predominantly or disproportionately filled up with Indigenous people and people of color, as it is in the United States as well, where none of these ethnic groups are represented or none of these ethnic groups are like uplifted. I think if you live in the West, if you're worried about cultural cleansing, you should be thinking about what is happening in your own culture and not trying to demonize other places who maybe don't have a perfect record or nobody's perfect, or no one's suggesting there's not issues or problems that exist in other cultures. But I think if we're living in the West and we're going to talk about cultural cleansing, we should be talking about the United States of America and we should be talking about Canada before we start lecturing other countries about that. That's my controversial stance on that, though.
I mean, I think it's actually no doubt about that. I think another aspect, though, to not just focus on sort of the rosy parts of it, is that this poverty campaign
You can count
and the
on me.
achievements
You're going to have
achieved
a
in
good
that.
old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thanks for the commiseration yesterday, Rob. I've been digging myself a doomer hole. It's been a terrible week to live in Vancouver.
ZD Grow, I appreciate that. Thanks for the 7 months of Tier 1. I really enjoyed that conversation with Kai Nagata yesterday. I encourage everyone, whether you live in Vancouver or not, I think it's really interesting to talk about what is happening in Vancouver, not just with this NDP leadership race and the whole debacle around that, but just Vancouver in general, or BC in general, as being kind of ground zero for the coming shift towards the right, towards like total fucking corporate control of our society, the shift towards law and order. BC in many ways is like ground zero for that. So I think I really appreciate paying attention to it and the work that people like Kai do in exposing that. But thanks ZD Grow. Thank you.
Was also addressing some of the
We
problems that
simply
were existing.
use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Cleansing means washing your hand before every meal, correct?
I think that's what that means, yeah. Thank you, Useless. Thank you for the 500 friend coin. Very kind of you. Thank you.
Vast majority of the country had been able to be lifted to middle class, but there were still many people that hadn't been. And there was large amounts, and still is large amounts, of inequality. There was a difference between the countryside and the cities, between the West and the East. So it was addressing all those issues. And in fact, in the report, Xi Jinping talked...
Look inward to the destabilization operation we launched there, so we could point fingers now. I understand your point, which I agree fully. I was more referring to things happening in Inner Mongol or Tibet. Again, I just feel uncomfortable accusing China of this kind of thing when we have this stuff going on in the West. And I think when it comes to Tibet especially, it's important to pay attention to what was going on in Tibet prior to the rise of the Chinese Communist Party and prior to Mao, which gets kind of framed as being this kind of like really peaceful society, which was in reality a kind of like somewhat brutal, like caste-based theocracy, which is, I think, now a lot more equal and equitable and prosperous than it was previously. And again, we're talking about the Tibetan language, which is still taught. It's still taught in schools, and I think, from my understanding, is respected a lot more than comparable cultures in Western society that Western societies have colonized. You know, I don't want to say, like Brian was saying, I don't want to suggest that everything's perfect or there's not issues or that these kinds of cultural traditions are 100% respected the way certain people want, you know, but I don't really feel comfortable condemning it at the same time when I live in Canada of all countries. And again, I think it's important to pay attention what was happening in places like Tibet prior to Mao and prior to the Chinese Civil War and the rise of the Communist Party. And if you actually look into that, you'll see that it's not exactly the sort of like peaceful, coexistent sort of paradise that it gets painted out to be. how many Canadian respect Inuktitut and Ojibwe as languages, like it is even taught to these particular nations. Yeah, it's like we're starting to like give sort of feints toward respecting these languages now, but this is a very new phenomenon, right? Again, I do not feel comfortable in Canada talking about official enemy states around the world and their treatment of other cultures. I just don't. I think it's so fucking hypocritical. Thank you for the context. I'm still new into these topics. Well, no problem, Livlin. Thanks for your respectful dialogue. Always happy to engage with people that have questions about this stuff as well. We're all learning about this as well. We love to have respectful discourse, don't we, folks? We love it.
Talks about, some of these problems and severe issues that had emerged, especially through the opening up reform period, that needed to be addressed. So in terms of uplifting poverty was also recognition of some of these problems that had existed or been exacerbated during that period. But then there's another aspect, I think, that is really important in terms of party building, in terms of the idea, is the question of what it did to consolidate the party, bring party members back in touch with the grassroots, especially in the countryside. One of the first things that Xi Jinping did when he came into power is that he did two things. He issued a list of what they're called 8 measures on austerity. And so it was a hard look at some of the practices in the party that had, around bureaucracy, around hedonism, around a kind of extravagance that had overtaken parts of the party. And part of it was looking at, okay, these are the 8 measures on how to be more austere in terms of less extravagance, less grand.
By the way, I'm not American. My view is more Japan-centric, which I know they were shitty colonizers as well. Yeah, I mean, a long history of Japan being incredibly vicious to other countries in the region, including China and including Korea. That's very true. Which I think can have a distorting effect when we talk now about these kind of relationships, these cultural relationships.
Receptions, less talk and more doing, and then also reigniting of this idea of the mass line. And so the second thing he did was creating a mass line campaign to sort of remove this level of detachment that had existed for some period, especially in the reform period, between the party and the people. And so when we look at this poverty campaign, it was also part of rebuilding the party or strengthening the party, reconnecting the party with the people. And so I think in a way, it addresses or looks straight on some of these problems that had emerged in the last 4 decades.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and I want to actually go to Xi's speech, because one thing about the speech is it's very forthcoming. Again, people getting their news from the Western media, they'll just see like negative headlines. But what China is saying and what the work report says and what Xi is saying, which is not just his thoughts. I mean, obviously, the work report is a collective product that many, many people participated in, because each word, recognizing that each word will be, analyzed, each word is carefully measured. I want to read a little bit about what he says about just what you're talking about. Great achievements had been secured in reform, opening up, in socialist modernization, and notable advances had been made in the great new projects of party building. All this created solid foundations, favorable conditions, and key underpinnings of our continued progress. He's talking about before. At the same time, however, a number of prominent issues and problems, some of which had been building for years and others which were just emerging, demanded urgent action. He's talking about the last 10 years of his leadership. Inside the party, there were many issues with respect to upholding the party's leadership, including a lack of clear understanding and effective action, as well as the slide towards weak, hollow, and watered-down party leadership and practice. Some party members and officials were wavering in their political conviction, despite repeated warnings. Pointless formalities, bureaucratism, hedonism, and extravagance persisted in some localities and department. Privilege-seeking mindsets and practices posed a serious problem, and some deeply shocking cases of corruption had been uncovered. And then he goes on to talk about other problems. He doesn't stop there. He's really spends quite a bit of time in the speech talking about these are real problems, real weaknesses, not just
she's basically
general,
Hitler
of the Communist Party.
God, just terrifying stuff.
And then he talks about, and not just that, also the problems of unbalanced economic growth, how it led to inequality, economic growth that was economic growth such that it actually helped deteriorate the economy and the environment. And then he talks about these are the things that we have tried to address. identified them, we've spoken openly about them, and we've taken concrete, practical, resolute action to address them. And I think that's really important for people to evaluate Xi's leadership over the last decade, that this isn't just talk, that it's not just rhetoric, that there have been profound transformations and reforms within the reforms. He's saying basically the reforms were a good idea, but they also created many, many problems, and we've identified them and we're dealing with them. I thought that was like a really important part
Dark Xi
of this presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important because we're looking at, these reports are a way of looking back at the work and assessment, a self-assessment, as a critical assessment. And I want to kind of just point back to the sort of handover speech by Hu Jintao in the last, in 2012. And in that speech, he mentioned corruption 16 times. And there was an important line he says, if we fail to address corruption, it could prove fatal to the party and even cause the collapse of the party and the fall of the state. These are extremely strong words. And I'm just using corruption as one of I think the key examples of sort of strong action that's been taken. And then in Xi's inaugural speech, his first speech as the General Secretary of the CPC, that's when he made that famous line about he's going to go after not only the tigers, but also not only the flies, but also the tigers. So looking at corruption from the grassroots level all the way up. And one of the things that we've been seeing is that in the last 10 years, over 2 million party members were investigated, including 800,000 that were actually expelled for wrongdoing. But when we're talking about the tigers, 43 Central Committee members and 6 Politburo members, and this includes foreign ministers, provincial governors, presidents of the major banks, have been processed and tried and investigated in corruption scandals.
Oh, so no, punishing people for corruption.
This is looking at one of the core examples. And
our whole economy is founded, and our political economy is founded on corruption. Can't have that. Punishing people for corruption, that's outrageous. Arrest this man. He's basically Hitler. He's even more Hitler than Putin is Hitler.
I know that in the West, a lot of the media likes to look at the anti-corruption campaign as some kind of sort of demonic campaign to secure his own personal power. But I think perhaps, I don't know, maybe the West, it's such a foreign concept to actually battle corruption in a real holistic way. But if you ask any Chinese person on the street or anywhere else, it probably is single-handedly the most important work that has gained the confidence of the people to say you have put this as a priority. You said it 10 years ago, and you now have something to show for it 10 years later.
Very important. In the United States or in Western capitalist countries, corruption isn't like that big of a deal because capitalism is a form of corruption. It's a form of organized greed. Greed is rewarded. It's incentivized. If you can exploit and take from those who do all the work and pocket the money, you're just considered a very successful business person. So the way corruption is dealt with here is so different. I mean, you look at the U.S. Congress, the 435 members of the House of Representatives spend the lion's share of their time doing fundraising. So they're getting money from corporations.
And they're all multimillionaires.
It's not corruption, but of course it's corruption. Anyway, very, very important. And I think that, if a government is viewed as truly corrupt, and especially a government that has a socialist or a communist party in its leadership, ultimately it will be the fatal undoing of that party and its standing and credibility with the masses of people. So the statistics you cited are super significant. Tings, I want to talk to you just as we sort of move a little bit towards the end here. What's the importance of the Communist Party Congress? Happens every 5 years. What are its chief decisions that it has to make? And how does it fit into Chinese governance? Because there are other important centers of institutional power like the National People's Congress. Just real briefly, what's the importance of this Congress?
Okay, great. I mean, I think the CPC National Congress is one of the obviously most important events happening only twice a decade. And we're looking at a party that is the largest governing party in the world. The CPC has 96 million people.
That's crazy.
It's a number that's quite.
I love to think about that too. 96 million members of the Communist Party of China, and we still have Canada, which there's more members, as I've mentioned a number of times. There's more members of the CPC than there is people that live in this country, by many times over. And we still think, because we have this colonizer mindset, we still think we have the ability to wag our fingers We wag our fingers at China, don't we? And say, you're doing democracy wrong. You're doing international development wrong. You're doing diplomacy wrong. Tisk, tisk. This is what we do in Canada. In Canada, as we say this. And do you know what they say, folks? Do you know what China says when Canada lectures them and tells them what democracy is and is not and what they should and shouldn't do? This country has more members of the CPC than we have people that live in this country, and we wag our fingers at them, and then they say,
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't care.
Jerry.
Astounding. And if it were to be a country, the CPC would be the 16th most populous country. So imagine, this is a massive ship to steer. So this kind of event not only dictates the future of where this party is going, but also the country and of course, and impacts the world. And I think one of the things I want to highlight is that, China, we've been talking a lot about this report, which is the key kind of message or the key sort of
the USA has sent a very silly
key
letter.
organizing part of the Congress is that China is a really highly consultative and collective culture, and this translates actually into the political culture as much as she is the one that delivers the speech. So to get a sense of sort of what is the preparation, the national preparation for a Congress like this, both in selecting the delegates who go and also in the drafting of that report, it's a process that starts well over a year before, and you have many research groups going to the base from the grassroots all the way up to investigate certain areas of society, the most urgent questions of the time. And there's hundreds of meetings and probably, I don't know, upwards of 3,000-4,000 people that are involved in.
The whole world doesn't give a shit about Canada except when they see that Canadian flag roll and they know they're about to get fucked over by a mining company. My neighbor was from Burkina Faso and that's what he thought about Canada. Not surprising. Yeah. I think every capitalist can agree that CPC was being highly immoral by not allowing COVID-19 to spread throughout their country uncontrolled. Didn't they consider the line? Sure, they prevented millions of their citizens from dying, but at what cost?
In not only drafting, being consulted, offering amendments into this report that gets presented in this level. This includes not only party members, but also non-party members, people part of the civil society or the other non-governing parties that exist in China. And there are 8
like Canada. Oh my.
And then the other aspect, I think, is also how the candidates are selected. There's nearly 2,300 members attending this one. And over a process of a year, there is what's called electoral units. And I think this is part of maybe the Chinese governance system that many people don't know about. There's actually many forms of sort of electoral politics, but it's in a different form than what we're used to in a liberal electoral democracy. And that process entails, nominations of candidates, reviews of candidates, there's public announcements of candidates, there's shortlisting, there's voting that happens in an electoral unit. And based on a variety of requirements that allow for a broad-based representation. For example, if one of the autonomous regions are electing their candidates, they have their own set in terms of who is being represented and who will be going. And that's just to say that there's a large kind of collective process that makes this event that happens every 5 years a key part of kind of bringing unity, consolidating the party, but also getting consensus on what should happen next. And on the question of sort of how this fits into the larger political structure of China, I mean, I don't really have enough time to go into here, but luckily, Dongsheng is actually just going to put out a short explainer on the Chinese political system either tomorrow or the next day. So keep an eye out on that. We're trying to kind of demystify a little bit of this question of, sort of where does the party begin and where does the state end, and also some of the aspects of, direct elections that happens at the grassroots levels, at the people's assemblies, and how the people's assemblies build up to the national people's assembly and all of that. So stay tuned for that. It'll come out in the next couple of days.
All right, let's just talk
Sounds
about
interesting.
that. So the Dongsheng News Collective, again, Dongsheng News Collective, you have a newsletter. You have multiple newsletters. I really encourage people who, you're published in multiple languages, but for our English language audience, you can get news from Dongsheng News Collective every week by subscribing to the newsletters. Real quick, how can people do that?
Sure. You can follow us on all the social media platforms at Dongsheng News, or go to our website at dongshengnews.org, and we have our material available in English, Portuguese, and Spanish.
All right, great. And Tings, I also want to emphasize to people, buy your book. Or are you selling your book, or can they get it for free?
No, I'm a communist.
Okay,
no,
you
can
have
download it on the
socialist prices.
tricontinental.org.
You have socialist prices. It's free, everybody. It's called Serve the People, the Eradication of Extreme Poverty in China. Tings Jack, thank you so much.
Really
Thank you,
interesting
Brian.
stuff.
Thank you, Breakthrough.
Really interesting stuff. That was good. Good shit. Anyway, I know sometimes on Twitch it's difficult. I know the discourse on this is really fucking horrific a lot of the time on Reddit, on Twitter, with our liberal friends and our social democrat friends and our anarchist friends and our leftcom friends. It's really hard in that climate, especially when this propaganda, Red Scare propaganda button is being mashed as it is now. But I'm here to tell you right now, folks, and whether you're one of the regulars on the stream who I'm sure agree with this, or if you're a lurker or someone that's just tuning in for the first time, someone that's contemplating some of these ideas for the first time maybe, I am here to tell you that you can and should be a China enjoyer. You can and should be a China respecter. I know it can be difficult in this kind of climate, but I actually think it's important to be both a China enjoyer and a China respecter. And you should be those things. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's actually cool and good. Look at me, I'm cool. I'm cool. And I'm a China respecter. And you should be too. We're heading into this new Cold War situation. The propaganda is getting ramped up. We see comments from the U.S. military themselves. We can see before we go, we can even look at this, right? We can even look at this before we have to go. We're seeing these kind of comments like our military leaders are preparing for this.
And so for our last 4 budget cycles, readiness has been our number one priority. So my approach has been commensurate with my responsibility, really, to field the most lethal, capable force that we can now and into the future. Because we're facing a pacing
You can count on
threat.
me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Oh, thank you for the gifted sub, Low Observable Goat, to Liv Lin. Thank you very much. Welcome to the community, Liv Lin. We're happy to have you.
China. If I look at the trends from
look at what they're saying
2018 to now in terms of how we talk about China. In the 2018 NDS, we really talked about great power competition, and that was a focus. And now, based on what we're seeing from an increasingly aggressive China and Russia, we are now we have our eyes on preparing ourselves for potential fight tonight. And so that could happen at any time, and combatant commanders have talked about different time frames, but it's a very real thing. And I don't want to field ships out there in a fight that aren't lethal, capable, and ready to win.
Let's pay attention to what these fucking ghouls are saying.
That he made. Recently,
like, we're pivoting towards open conflict with China. It's not just going to be a rhetorical game for that much longer if these fucking ghouls have their way. And when this moment comes, your little nuanced position about this, where you say neither Washington nor Beijing, or you say, well, I'm a communist, so China bad because it's capitalist, or any of these nuanced little ways that we have to express our China bad opinions, none of that is going to matter, because you will be contributing to this. You will be contributing to a fucking massive global confrontation, which has the power to fucking destroy the entire world many times over. Your little nuanced opinion about this will mean nothing. So before this moment comes, it's our duty, it's our job to be against this with full-throatedly, with no apologies and no reservations. Whatever little impact that has, we owe that to try and slow this down, to try and counteract this relentless narrative. Okay? Just be anti-war if nothing else, please. I know that's very difficult for people. The anti-war but crowd, like our friend Bruce Arthur. But this is important, folks. We got to be on the right side of this.
China hosted its 20th Communist Party Congress. The big headline to come out of that was looking at a potentially faster reunification timeline with Taiwan. And I just wonder, the Navy had really considered this so-called Davidson window of 2027. And hearing what came out of China...
I do everything with my full throat as well.
What that means for the Navy.
In my mind, that has to be a 2022 window or potentially a 2023 window. I can't rule that out.
Like, let's be clear about what's going on there. So if you're watching this, yes, you should be a China respecter and a China enjoyer like me. Okay? John sent a great video from Dongsheng about like breaking down how China's political system works. I do want to watch that, but I think I'm running out of time today, so I think this is something next week we can take a look at more of the work that Dongsheng has been doing. Also, this 20th National Congress is going to be finished, so there should be more content to take a look at next week when that's totally wrapped up. So I will punt that to next week, John, but I'm going to bookmark that video, though, so thank you. Anyway, folks, it's time to say goodbye. It's been a great week of content here on TRRS. Thank you for watching the stream this week and today and always over the last weeks and months. I love every single one of you that is part of this community, and I appreciate it a lot. I will be back on Monday. Same Rob time, same Rob channel. Barring some kind of unforeseen difficulty, which does sometimes happen, as you know, but I should be back on Monday. Who are we rating in case you can't do it? Let's see here. Let's see. I would say let's raid Dan Simpson. And I still can't raid. I can't raid. Yesterday I just had to end the stream. And apparently Outrun can... Oh, excuse me. I think I got one more. Oh, now I got an in-between sneeze. I hate those. Oh, that's the worst. When you feel the sneeze, but then it doesn't come. Oh. Fucking hate that. I don't know what is with this lack of rating ability. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. We don't know. Twitch.tv is working with the new U.S. Office of China Non-Enjoyment to investigate your content and has temporarily limited some of your account features. Figures. It is the slow motion coup. God damn it. God damn it. Thank you again, friends. I will talk to you after the weekend, and I'll be, if you're in the Discord server, you can see you there. That's all. Have a nice weekend. Goodbye.